Chapter 226, The Death of Nick Fury. What are your plans after that? Will you return to Asgard? George continued to ask. He knew that it was only a matter of time before Thor picked up Thor's hammer, so it was not surprising. George, thank you for your help, but I'm afraid I'll have to bother you for a while. During this time, through your books and TV, I found that your human problems are much more serious than our God's domain. Compared to the God's domain, perhaps Midgard needs me more. Thor closed the book. So I plan to stay in Midgard for a long time to help you humans. Anyway, there is the Rainbow Bridge, and I can rush back in time if anything happens. Isn't it because of Jane? I heard from Logan that you guys have been dating a lot recently. George showed a look that all men understand. Thor coughed immediately. Ah, this is certainly part of the reason, but it is definitely not the main reason. As the ruler of the Nine Realms, the Divine Realm has the responsibility to protect the Nine Realms. As the God of Thunder, the future Lord of the Divine Realm, I also have the responsibility to protect humans. Well, no matter what the reason is, we welcome you to stay. George patted Thor on the shoulder and walked towards the school basement. He still has some places to upgrade, such as using the Traceless extension spell to expand the space of the battle simulation room, so that the children and he have enough space to practice superpowers and magic. Now it is just a preliminary upgrade. When his alchemy level is improved in the future, the whole school will continue to be transformed. Not only must the magical characteristics of Hogwarts Castle be gathered, but it must also be mobile like the mobile fortress of Fairy Tale, and add super strong attack magic circles. If possible in the later stage, he also plans to lift the entire school from the ground to make a city in the sky, which will be safer. However, before he walked to the basement, the mobile phone in his pocket suddenly rang. It's Black Widow. Seeing the caller ID, he picked up the phone and joked. Natasha, what's up, are you considering leaving S.H.I.E.L.D. and joining our school? George, Director Fury is dead, S.H.I.E.L.D. is finished, we need your help. Natasha's tired voice came from the other end of the phone. George was stunned when he heard it. Nick Fury is dead, are you sure? Nick Fury is not very good at other things, but he should be first class at saving his life. Not only does he have the Skrulls as clones, but there is also a powerful Captain Marvel behind him. To be honest, even now, he is not sure that he can beat Captain Marvel. You know, Captain Marvel can travel in the universe without any equipment, and can penetrate the most advanced Kree warships and Thanos warships in the universe with his body. So the moment he heard the news of Nick Fury's death, he immediately felt that the other party should not be really dead, but fake death. But what Black Widow said next made him suspicious. We were ambushed by a large number of Winter Soldiers from Hydra. Director Fury was shot through the chest by a Winter Soldier and died on the spot. The Winter Soldiers are a group of killing weapons that Hydra created using serum. They have no emotions and only obey orders. We thought there was only one before, but we didn't expect there would be a large number of them. In the movie universe, there is only one Winter Soldier, and that is Captain America's friend Bucky. After falling on the train, he was found by Hydra. After being injected with serum for transformation and brainwashing, he became one of Hydra's most powerful killers and killed Iron Man's parents. This incident also led to the occurrence of the Avengers Civil War. Could it be that the batch of Winter Soldiers at the Hydra base in the Civil War were activated in advance? At this time, George suddenly remembered that in addition to Bucky, Hydra also used their most elite killing squad to create more than 30 Winter Soldiers, who were finally killed in the ice by Helmut Zemo. According to Bucky in the movie, each of these more than 30 Winter Soldiers is proficient in more than 30 languages, and is good at infiltration, assassination, disguise and subversion of the regime. They come and go without a trace. If they unite, they can even bring down a small country. After all, this is not the movie universe, but an unknown Marvel universe. And because of his intervention, S.H.I.E.L.D. knew the existence of Hydra in advance and started a head-on confrontation with Hydra. So if Hydra activated those frozen Winter Soldiers in advance, it would make sense. It is not impossible that Nick Fury was caught off guard and died in it. In some universes, let alone Nick Fury, Iron Man and Captain America have died a lot. And Captain America is now a teacher in his school. Without Captain America's help, S.H.I.E.L.D. can't beat Hydra, which is understandable. After Nick Fury died, did his body become strange, such as turning green? What did he mean by green? George, I'm not kidding you. Shield has been completely defeated now, and Hydra's next move may endanger the entire world. They are preparing to activate the aerospace carrier seized from Shield and start the Insight project. Natasha's tone on the other end of the phone seemed a little anxious. Nick Fury's death made her a little confused. The government is not reliable at all, and it is unknown how many Hydra spies are hiding. Now the only one who can stop Hydra from implementing the Insight plan is George. The news about Hydra was given by George, and Captain America is also on George's side. George's school is full of mutants with various abilities and strong strength. Okay, where are you now? I'll go find you. If the dead person is Nick Fury disguised as a Skrull, then his body will definitely restore the appearance of a Skrull after death. Since there is no such person, it is really possible that Nick Fury was killed in person. Nick Fury was killed, and Shield was completely defeated. If he did not help, then with the strength of Hydra, it is likely that it will be able to subvert the entire Earth and rule the entire world. Odin and Ancient One will not participate in the civil war of mankind. He remembered that there are indeed some universes in Marvel where Hydra ruled the world. And George naturally does not want to see this result, because Hydra practices absolute hegemony, which can be seen from the Insight plan. What is the Insight plan? That is, using Dr. Zola's Zola algorithm, calculate all the people who may threaten the existence of Hydra in the future, and then launch 3 aerospace aircraft carriers, use high-altitude sniping to kill these people in advance before they become powerful. In the future, everyone must obey the rule of Hydra unconditionally, otherwise they will be dealt with. So George and his Superpower Academy must naturally submit to Hydra in order not to be targeted. But how could George obey Hydra? Then the only way is to stop Hydra's plan and let Hydra understand who can be provoked and who cannot be provoked. I have something urgent today, so it's even later, sorry. Chapter 227. Miraculous Healing Magic. We are near your school, but we can't find the location of your school. Black Widow said awkwardly. Originally, they wanted to go directly to the school to ask for help from George, but when they arrived nearby, they found that they could not find the school at all, even with the instruments they had developed before. What makes them even more surprised is that the school's location, which was originally located based on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s technology positioning system, has completely disappeared from the system. This caused them to walk around the neighborhood several times, but they still had no clue. They could only use the contact device they had left behind to contact George through their mobile phones. Oh, I just upgraded the school's defense system a little bit. Let's do this, just stand where you are and I'll pick you up. George suddenly realized that it turned out that he was blocked from the school by his loyalty curse. Spreading his wings and flying out of the school, he soon found the injured Black Widow and others on the roadside near the school. There are quite a few people. In addition to the Black Widow, Coulson, Hawkeye, Hill, and May he knew, there were also a dozen S.H.I.E.L.D. agents he didn't know, and basically all of them had injuries on their bodies. However, it is understandable that each of the more than 30 Winter Soldiers has about the same strength as Captain America under normal circumstances. It is indeed difficult for these S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to have a chance of winning. George, I know you don't like to get involved in our affairs, but if Hydra's plan succeeds this time, the whole world will be in chaos. Black Widow saw George appearing and once again emphasized the seriousness of the matter. If you are willing to help, S.H.I.E.L.D. will give you a satisfactory reward after it is rebuilt. Based on her analysis of George's character, she knew that George was not a person with a strong sense of justice, and he had to have certain interests before he would be willing to help. Go to the school for treatment first, and then tell me in detail what's going on. George nodded and led Black Widow and others to the school gate first. He really doesn't want anything from S.H.I.E.L.D. right now. S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't have any magic for him to learn, and he doesn't dare to learn Marvel's magic. All Marvel's magic has its own origin and is connected to the corresponding demon. Whichever demon's magic is used will have to pay a corresponding price, even if he uses his own magic. Like the Crimson Belt of Karmatage's magic Sidorak, it comes from the demon god Sidorak. The Shield of Seraphim comes from the demon god Seraphim. The Sacred Sword of Emperor Weishan comes from Emperor Weishan. This is also the reason why he never went to find Ancient One and then went to Karmatage to learn magic. Moreover, Gu Yi, that old salty fish, was enigmatic and had a great connection with eternity, so he did not want to have contact with him for the time being. Unless he waits until one day, his strength can match those of the demon gods, he can analyze the magic of those dimensional demon gods, and finally use his own magic knowledge to restore it. To be honest, he was quite interested in Kamataj's space gate that could teleport across planets. But if you are really interested in something from SHIELD, it might be the Cosmic Cube. As one of the 6 Infinity Stones born in the Big Bang, it contains the most fundamental laws and power of the world. The weapons born just from studying it are very powerful. Like the energy weapons made by Hydra during World War II by extracting the energy of space gems. And Captain Marvel was able to obtain such powerful power because Kree scientists studied space gems and produced a light-speed engine. If you can get the space gem and use the infinite power in the gem to meditate and increase your magic power, then wouldn't it be an inexhaustible magic crystal? This is our school, Super Academy. As soon as George said the name Super Academy, the entire school seemed to have appeared out of thin air, in the eyes of Black Widow and other SHIELD agents. When he casts the fidelity charm on the school, the only person George keeps secret is himself. That is to say, only by knowing the location of the school through his mouth can he see the school, and he can only see the school by himself and cannot tell others the location of the school. For example, he now tells these SHIELD agents the location of the school, and these agents can see the school, and when these agents leave and want to take other people to the school, a phenomenon will occur. That is, no matter what these agents say, even if they carry people into the school, those people cannot see the school. This is the power of the Chitin loyalty spell. So even though Snape was a member of the Order of the Phoenix, he was not the secret keeper and could not tell Voldemort the location of the Order of the Phoenix. Of course, Snape himself was a spy, which was just a legitimate reason to prevent Voldemort from knowing the location of the Order of the Phoenix. And even if the secret keeper is captured, no matter how tortured he is, as long as the secret keeper does not reveal the location willingly, he still cannot find the place protected by the Red Dank loyalty curse. This is why Sirius immediately knew that Pettigrew had rebelled after knowing that Voldemort had killed the Potters. It's amazing. Coulson muttered, holding his arms soaked in blood. He has read information about the Super Academy, and also knows about the magic of this school from Nick Fury and Black Widow. But after seeing it with my own eyes, it still felt incredible. As for the other SHIELD agents, most of them didn't know about the existence of the Superpower Academy before. It was only after Nick Fury's death that Black Widow and other senior agents brought them here to learn a little bit. Healed as before. Bringing Black Widow and others to the school conference room, George used telepathy to notify Professor X to temporarily suspend classes, brought all the teachers here, and then began to use healing magic to treat these SHIELD agents one by one. The injured agents watched their wounds gradually heal under George's magic, and they all showed shock again. These injuries that would not heal without lying in the hospital for several months were so easily healed, without even a scar. They didn't know that for wizards, this injury was really nothing. Even if it was split, as long as the separated limbs were not lost, the healing magic could reconnect you. No need to lift the clothes, it's okay to do it through the clothes. A female agent had a wound on her chest. When it was her turn to be treated, she immediately lifted up her entire top, not caring about exposing her important parts. Fortunately, George stopped her in time and put it down again. After he finished treating all the agents, Professor X and other teachers from the school also came to the conference room. Tell me, what happened? Why did you lose so badly? Didn't you say you had the upper hand before? Seeing that everyone was there, George gave a general account of the situation and asked Black Widow in detail. Chapter 228. Insight Plan. Because we got the news of Hydra from you first, we had the upper hand at the beginning and found their leader Pierce. But the Cosmic Cube was stolen by Hydra agents some time ago, and they copied the energy weapons of World War II, which caught us off guard. We had no choice but to temporarily retreat from the Triskelion headquarters and hide in the safe house. But who knew that a group of Hydra's winter soldiers had been ambushed in the safe house? We suffered heavy casualties in the surprise attack, and even Director Fury died. In the end, only we escaped the pursuit of the winter soldiers, and we had no choice but to ask you for help. Black Widow told George the general situation, including Hydra's Insight Plan. The so-called Eye of Insight plan was originally an ideal plan for Pierce to deceive Nick Fury to send 3 aerospace carriers into the sky to monitor the entire planet and end all crimes before they started. In fact, Hydra calculated all the existences that might threaten Hydra according to Dr. Zola's Zola algorithm, and planned to solve them in advance with aerospace carriers before they became strong. including using aerospace carriers to deal with all countries that dared to resist Hydra and unify the entire Earth in the future. Before George spoke, Captain America Steve shook his head and said, "You really shouldn't have fished that thing out of the sea again. It was because of the cosmic cube that the Red Skull was able to make Hydra stronger, and he experienced it personally. Such dangerous things, according to his idea, should be buried in the depths of the ocean forever, so that no one could find them." "Captain, you are right. If the director did not want to develop energy weapons by studying cosmic magic, Hydra would not have had the opportunity to steal them." Coulson nodded when he heard Captain America's words. Captain America is his idol, so what he said is naturally reasonable, and he did not approve of the director's approach at the beginning. He felt that the director was sometimes too radical. "I think the director did nothing wrong, it's just that we were a step behind. If we could develop energy weapons first, we would win, and the director wouldn't die." Another middle-aged agent with a cold face retorted with gritted teeth and a face full of grief and anger. Coulson sighed after hearing this. "John, I know you are sad about the director's death, but, forget it, the most important thing for us now is how to stop Hydra's Insight plan, and there is no need to argue about the past. John is one of his best friends in S.H.I.E.L.D. They followed Nick Fury on the mission together. Nick Fury was both their boss and their teacher. So when Nick Fury was killed, he could understand John's feelings very well, because he was also very sad. By the way, I haven't asked for your names yet, what are your names?" When George heard the name John, his heart suddenly froze, and then he smiled and asked the dozen or so S.H.I.E.L.D. agents he didn't know. The middle-aged agent named John took the lead and began to report their names. John Garrett, Grant Ward, Gemma Simmons, Leo Fitz, Alfonso Mackenzie, Barbara Morse. "Good fellow, no wonder you were ambushed, it turns out that there were Hydra agents sneaking in." After George heard everyone's names, a sneer immediately appeared on the corner of his mouth. He was not sure about the others, but if he remembered correctly, John Garrett and Grant Ward, the Master and Apprentice, were ironclad Hydra spies. The expression of pain and anger just now because of Nick Fury's death was naturally pretended. His acting was really good. If he hadn't remembered it, he would have almost been fooled. Top spies have first-class acting skills, which is normal. "George," a group of people came near the school, and they seemed to be the Winter Soldiers they were talking about. At this time, Professor X put his hand on his temple and transmitted the picture he saw to George. A group of fully armed soldiers with Hydra badges, who moved much faster than ordinary people, immediately appeared in George's mind. However, these soldiers had been wandering around the school and could not enter because of the Fidelius curse. It seems that there are maybe more than 2 Hydra spies who followed the traces left by them. "George, we have to hurry up. Hydra has captured the Triskelion headquarters and obtained 3 aerospace carriers. They may be launched into the air at any time. By then, we will have no chance of winning." Black Widow saw that George did not look surprised after hearing the whole story, and seemed to be a little unhurried, so she urged him. She was the most familiar with George in S.H.I.E.L.D., and others were afraid of making George unhappy if they urged him, so she had to do it. In fact, Hill and others also had anxious expressions on their faces. "You're right, but before that, we have to get rid of some traitors first, otherwise nothing we do will succeed." George smiled and glanced at all the agents, then looked at Garrett and said, "How about we start with Mr. Garrett and take them one by one?" George actually didn't care much about the threat of 3 aerospace carriers taking off. First of all, with the school's defense capabilities, plus he was in charge, the aerospace carriers would basically not pose a threat to the school unless they launched a nuclear bomb directly at New York. And the lives and deaths of others have nothing to do with him. Secondly, in his opinion, the aerospace carrier is not as powerful as Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. imagine. It is not 10,000, but only 3. The Earth is not as simple as they imagine. Let alone the others, will the hidden Eternals just sit and wait for death when they suddenly find that the aerospace carrier above their heads is attacking them? There are also the 10 Rings and Ghost Rider. If he remembers correctly, Doctor Strange is also on the list to be killed. Ancient One will not let Doctor Strange, the future Supreme Sorcerer, get into trouble in advance. So if the aerospace carrier really takes off and attacks all threatening existences on the ground, he may not even need to do anything, and he may have been beaten by others. Finally, he also wants to use this opportunity to let the Superpower Academy come to the surface. The location of the Superpower Academy can be hidden, but the students of the Superpower Academy will definitely enter social life in the future and cannot be hidden. Therefore, the existence of the Superpower Academy must appear in front of the public and in front of the governments of various countries. Let Hydra cause more trouble, preferably until all governments are overwhelmed and unable to deal with it, and then the Superpower Academy will take action to solve it. This will have a prominent effect, and governments will understand the power of the Superpower Academy. Chapter 229. Hidden Spy. Otherwise, you will be asked to sign the Sokovia Accords like the Avengers, and if you don't obey, you will be wanted worldwide. I always arrogantly think that if the Avengers don't exist, the country's army can solve any crisis. In Avengers 3, Thanos' donuts have entered the Earth, and Ross still wants to arrest Captain America. He has to use Hydra to completely destroy the confidence of these governments in order to establish the prestige of the Superpower Academy. So he is not in a hurry at all. Traitor, what do you mean? Garrett stood up and looked at George with a bad tone. You say that those of us who have fought for S.H.I.E.L.D. and the world until now and have struggled on the edge of death for many times are traitors? This is an insult to us. Hey, I advise you to be careful when talking to our principal, otherwise I don't mind putting some color on you. Wolverine Logan raised his hand and stretched out his wolf claws. He has always been indifferent to these government agencies. The most persecuted mutants are those hypocritical government agencies. He and Professor X have been hunted by the government for a long time. I advise you to put away your claws. Ward, who was next to Garrett, pulled out his pistol and pointed it at Logan. Logan immediately showed a mocking look on his face. Boy, your toy can't hurt me. Don't be impulsive, we don't mean that. Grant, put away your gun. Coulson saw that the atmosphere was tense, and quickly stood up to smooth things over. George smiled. Coulson, we naturally trust you and Natasha, but for the others, sorry, if we don't test them, how can we be sure that there are no Hydra spies among them? Don't you think it's strange, why would a group of Winter Soldiers ambush the safe house in advance? What George said makes sense, I think it is necessary. Black Widow stood up and agreed with George's words, and her friend Hawkeye nodded. In fact, with her keenness, she may have suspected that there were Hydra spies among them because the safe house was leaked and ambushed. But this kind of thing is not suitable for her to bring up at this time. George has psychic abilities and can see into people's hearts, and there is also Professor X who is even better at this. Either of the two can help them do a test. This is also one of the reasons why she came to George immediately after escaping from Hydra's pursuit. If it is not confirmed whether there are Hydra spies among the remaining people, then the subsequent actions cannot be carried out at all. Nick Fury was killed, but Nick Fury also left a lot of backups. They are not without anything, provided that there are no more traitors. Natasha, are you kidding? Garrett looked at Natasha in disbelief. You know how many confidential files there are in our brains. Who can guarantee that he will not look through our memories when testing? And he can modify memories. I don't believe him. Garrett's words immediately made some of the agents below hesitate. Even if they are not Hydra spies, no one is willing to open their memories for people to check. This is much more terrifying than stripping naked for people to see. A man's browser and a woman's WeChat chat history would be very embarrassing if they were seen, not to mention directly looking at the memory, which would be a complete look from inside to outside. Coulson, what do you mean? Garrett then looked at Coulson again, and Coulson hesitated and nodded. John, things have come to this point, Fury is dead, and no secret of S.H.I.E.L.D. is important. I believe in George, so I hope you believe him. This is just a test. Of course, he did not doubt Garrett, an old comrade who had been through life and death many times, and Garrett's worries were not unreasonable. But there is no way at this time, and they must make sure that there are no Hydra spies among them before they can proceed to the next step. And they really need the power of George and the Superpower Academy. Natasha and I will also be tested, so that everyone can be at ease. That's decided. Agent Hill also stood up. The highest level agents left in S.H.I.E.L.D. are Coulson, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Hill, and Garrett. 4 of the 5 senior agents agreed, so the matter was settled. But at this time, Garrett snorted coldly. I don't believe him. You can test it if you want. Anyway, I can't let such an outsider read my memory. I want to leave here and defeat Hydra in my own way. Who is willing to join me? Let's leave now, so you don't have to worry about the so-called traitor. Teacher, I will follow you. I don't want to leave my fate in the hands of a group of outsiders. Grant immediately agreed. Then another agent stood behind Garrett, obviously agreeing with Garrett. John, this is not the time to be upset. Please believe me. Coulson stood in front of John with some discomfort. And John pulled out a pistol and handed it to Coulson. Either you kill me now, or let me go. I believe you, but I don't believe these outsiders. He and Garrett were both equipped with special trackers. Hydra's winter soldiers must have chased them. Now, as long as they leave the school and meet up with those winter soldiers, they can capture everyone in one fell swoop. In fact, they deliberately left a hole in the safe house to let Black Widow and others escape. The purpose was to follow the clues and find more valuable things. Now it seems to be very rewarding. Eliminating these mutants is also a great threat. Well said, but sorry, I didn't let you go, none of you can leave. George applauded Garrett's acting skills. This guy's acting skills are really good. It's hard to tell that he has surrendered to Hydra. What do you mean? Gatteler turned his head and glared at George, and George looked at Banner. Show them. Banner controlled the instrument, and a large screen immediately appeared in the conference room, and the figures of the winter soldiers on the screen were among them. In the eyes of the winter soldiers outside, the Superpower Academy no longer existed, even if they had already attached to the outer wall of the Academy. But on the surveillance camera on the outer wall of the Superpower Academy, all of these winter soldiers were seen clearly. It's them, how did they find this place? Black Widow and others immediately recognized these people. They were the Hydra winter soldiers who attacked them in the safe house. So, there must be a traitor among you who leaked the traces. I think it's these guys who want to leave. Thor, who was leaning against the door of the conference, saw the problem. Chapter 230. Abnormal Hydra. You'd better not move. Seeing that he was about to lose his cover, Garrett picked up the pistol that he had just put in Cole's hand and immediately pointed it at Coulson's temple, holding him hostage. His apprentice Grant also reacted quickly, grabbing the least threatening Gemma Simmons and also pointing the gun at her head. Let us go, as long as they leave here, we will let them go. As long as their memories are read, the two will be exposed immediately. So now they must take the hostages and leave the school to join the winter soldiers before everyone reacts. As for the third person, he was at a loss. He was really fooled by Garrett's words and was not a spy of Hydra. John, you bastard, it turns out that you leaked the location of the safe house and killed Fury. You really deserve to die. At this time, Coulson didn't understand that the traitors were his most trusted old comrade John and his apprentice Grant. It was because of the most trust that he was so angry now. Coulson, you are still so naive. I really don't understand how you got to the same level as me. I don't want to betray you either, but you know, I injured my vital organs during a mission and I won't live long. But Nick Fury, that guy, was unwilling to save me. Hydra promised to help me transform my body so that I can have the strongest and most perfect body. I just want to live. Garrett sneered. It was S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury who gave up on him first, so he chose to betray. What's wrong with him? Coulson gritted his teeth and replied. Fury said that our technology is not perfect enough. If you rashly transform it, you will become a madman. He has not given up on you, but it is not the right time yet. You should not believe that Hydra can help you. They will only use you and make you a killing machine like those winter soldiers outside. It doesn't matter. I'm not that stupid. Hydra wants to use me, and I will use them. I will not become a brainless killing machine, but the most perfect human. Become one of the leaders who will rule mankind in the future. Garrett's expression was crazy, and he signaled Grant to follow him to retreat to the door of the conference room. However, as soon as their bodies moved, they found that the guns in their hands suddenly stopped, and then they were twisted into a twist by an invisible force and turned into scrap metal. Coulson, they don't know that in addition to my psychic abilities, I can also control metal. Are they so brave to play with guns in front of me? It was George who took action. He only knows that you can change the trajectory of the bullet, but he doesn't know that you can directly control the gun. In fact, I don't know either. Coulson took advantage of Garrett's daze and hit Garrett's stomach with an elbow, and then knocked Garrett down with a very smooth set of fighting combos. His melee ability is not as good as Black Widow and Hawkeye, but it is also of a good level. It is not too difficult to knock down Garrett, who has organ failure, at the right time. Yes, I forgot to tell you that my ability has improved a lot recently. George understood that he could only control a weight of more than 100 kilograms before, so that the bullet deviated from the original trajectory and attacked in an arc, and he could not directly destroy the opponent's firearms. And now, after development and the addition of Misaka's clone ability, he can already control a weight of 10 tons, and the firearms are more fragile than toys in front of him. Boy, if you want to run, I'll play with you. Grant over there saw that things were not good, and directly gave up on Gemma and rushed to the door of the conference room, but was stopped by Thor standing at the door. Get out of my way. Grant is the best among the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. He can even fight May on equal terms. Normally, he can fight 10 agents alone. Seeing that Thor dared to block him, he immediately took out a dagger and stabbed Thor, intending to kill him with one blow without wasting time to escape. Unfortunately, the Thor he met was not an ordinary person. Even if he had not yet recovered his divine power, Thor's physical fitness and combat ability were not comparable to ordinary people. People like Grant were not his opponents at all. You are not as good as my brother in using this dagger. Reaching out to grab Grant's wrist holding the dagger, Thor threw it backhand and threw it to the ground, with a clean and neat movement. Quickly imprison. Raising his hand and throwing out 2 rope spells to tie up Garrett and Grant, George began to use the soul reciting spell in conjunction with telepathy to check the memories of the two. After a moment, he retracted his hand, and his expression changed slightly. The strength of Hydra in this world is not weak. No wonder Nick Fury lost. The information he saw about Hydra from Garrett and Grant's minds was much stronger than the Hydra in the movies and TV series he watched. It may be that they are in different universes, so there are many differences in many aspects. In the movie, Hydra has many branches, and each branch has a leader. The Hydra created by the Red Skull in World War II is just one of the branches. The real Hydra originated 1,400 years ago. In order to create powerful warriors for interstellar wars, the Kree Empire conducted illegal transformation experiments on many relatively primitive planets, and the Earth was one of them. They created the Inhumans with superpowers by transforming the Earth's humans. The first Inhuman, Hive, possessed the ability to control all Inhumans, and led them to collectively rebel against the Kree and drove them out of the Earth. It just so happened that the Kree Empire also terminated this illegal transformation experiment. The Inhumans who stayed on Earth feared that the Hive would control them, and launched a second rebellion, using the black stone portal left by the Kree to exile the Hive to other planets in the universe. A group of humans who worshipped the Hive created the Hydra organization, and from generation to generation, they transported humans to the planet where the Hive was located through the black stone portal in order to rescue the Hive and rule the Earth. However, the Hydra in this world does not seem to be like this. There is no saying that the Hydra originated from the Inhumans, and of course it is possible that Garrett and Grant are not aware of such a deep inside story. However, George thinks that it is most likely not, because in Garrett's memory, there is a Hive in the Hydra, but it is not an ancient Inhuman, but a Hydra agent with a terminal illness. The agent was transformed by Hydra's Baron Strucker, who merged with a group of parasites and was reborn. The Baron Strucker in this world is not like the one in the movie, who used the Mind Scepter to create Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. His own strength is even weaker, and he was knocked to the ground by Captain America in one fell swoop. The Baron Strucker in this world is very strong. Chapter 231. The Disappearance of Captain Marvel. According to Garrett's memory, Baron Strucker was originally active during World War II and was a master swordsman and sharpshooter. He was on the same level as the Red Skull. He was accidentally killed by a spore bomb. Later, he was resurrected through the efforts of Hydra scientists, possessing a powerful body and various abilities. He has also been conducting research on superpowers, capturing and creating many superpowered Hydra warriors. In addition to Hive and Baron Strucker, there are many powerful beings in the Hydra organization, such as Madame Hydra and Baron Zemo. Yes, Baron Zemo here is not the Sokovian colonel in the movie, but one of the top executives of Hydra at the same level as Red Skull and Baron Strucker during World War II. In addition to these high-level officials, Hydra also has Hydra scientists like Zola, Lister, and Faust. Zola is also different from the movie. In the movie, Zola was diagnosed with terminal illness in 1972, so her consciousness was transferred to a supercomputer of the same era and placed in a secret facility of S.H.I.E.L.D. in New Jersey. But in this world, Zola has transferred his consciousness into the body of a robot and can move freely and conduct scientific research. Garrett has also seen him. It was precisely because of meeting Zora that he firmly joined Hydra, believing that Hydra could transform his body. It's a lot better than in the movie, but that's it. The Hydra in this world was much more powerful than the Hydra he knew, but to George now, it was nothing. Not much of a threat. How about it? Seeing George lost in thought, Black Widow took a step forward. George came back to his senses and smiled. They are indeed Hydra agents. They have been passing information to Hydra, so you were ambushed and attacked. After speaking, he paused and continued. Although they only remember the two of them as Hydra agents, I need to check your memories again just in case. No problem, let's start with me. Coulson took a step forward. George was not polite, and directly used legilimency and telepathy to quickly browse Coulson's memories. Coulson's growth experience was not complicated. He worshipped superheroes since he was a child and was a loyal fan of Captain America. He first joined the Army Rangers, and later joined S.H.I.E.L.D., following Nick Fury all the way until now. However, it was this uncomplicated experience that confused George. What's going on? Why isn't there Captain Marvel? He found no memory fragments about Captain Marvel or the Skrulls in Coulson's memory. According to the movie, the young Coulson followed Nick Fury and had contact with Captain Marvel and the Skrulls. Although the contact time was not long, he should not have no memory at all. Is there really no Captain Marvel in this universe? This is not a cinematic universe, and there is no rule that there must be Captain Marvel. So Nick Fury did not use a Skrull stand-in, not because of an accident, but because there was no Skrull stand-in at all. He also doesn't have the BB machine that can call Captain Marvel. The universe is really getting more and more complex. In fact, this is not a good thing for George. It's not that Hydra's strength has increased and may pose a threat to him, or that Captain Marvel doesn't exist, resulting in the loss of a powerful helper in the future fight against Thanos. Rather, these changes mean that this universe may be different from the movie universe in many aspects. In this way, his previous judgments based on the original plot will have huge errors. Originally, George felt that he was already very strong now, and would be even stronger when Thanos came to Earth. By then, Thanos and his cosmic army might not be anything to him. But now it seems that maybe what he thought was too simple. He hasn't read the Marvel comics, but he doesn't know anything about it. If the one who comes is not the Infinity Stone Thanos, but the Heart of the Universe Thanos, then this good guy will be completely GG. It seems we still can't relax. At this moment, George's heart tightened again, and he had to work harder to improve his strength. After watching Coulson, he scanned all the memories of Black Widow and others. The remaining people were all agents loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D., and there were no Hydra spies lurking. In this way, Nick Fury is completely dead. Originally he thought Nick Fury should be resurrected. Because in the Captain Marvel incident, Nick Fury obtained the blood of the Kree and developed the GH325 drug, which can bring people back to life, but it has serious side effects. The main person in charge is Coulson. In the TV series, Nicholson was resurrected by Nick Fury using GH325. But now it seems that it cannot be resurrected. There is no Captain Marvel. Where did the Kree come from? Naturally they cannot develop GH325. Death is death, which is not a bad thing for George. Nick Fury is too controlling and not very capable. He likes to control everything in his own hands. Although his intentions are not bad, he is bound to be targeted. It would be better to replace someone like Coulson as the chief. George, many people are coming again. At this time, Professor X transmitted the picture he telepathically perceived to George's mind. Combat helicopters with the S.H.I.E.L.D. logo flew over the school area, and fully armed Hydra soldiers slid down from the helicopters with energy guns. Apparently, because Garrett and Grant could no longer pass on the message, the tracking Winter soldiers had not found any traces of the missing Black Widow and others. So Hydra no longer hid and planned to conduct a blanket search and attack. The tanks have been dispatched. It seems that S.H.I.E.L.D. is completely controlled by Pierce. In addition to combat helicopters and a large number of Hydra soldiers, George also saw tanks appearing nearby. At the same time, everyone also discovered the actions of Hydra in the surveillance of the conference room. Coulson, shield is finished. Hydra is much stronger than you think. Give up resistance. Join us. With my recommendation, you can get a much higher position than you have now in shield. In the future, when Hydra unifies the world, it can also give you the territory of a small country. At that time, you will be the king of that small country and do whatever you want. Garrett saw the Hydra army on the screen and immediately persuaded Coulson. And Coulson turned his head and looked at Hawkeye. Do you still have that arrow that can discharge electricity? I want to give it to him, and then he looked at the screen while watching him drooling on the ground because of his body out of control. As a fan of Captain America, he joined S.H.I.E.L.D. for the lofty ideal of protecting the world. Chapter 232, Thunder Strikes the Hydra. Sorry, I ran out of it during the previous battle. Hawkeye spread his hands and Coulson sighed regretfully. Seeing that Garrett could not convince Coulson, he immediately shifted his target to George. Because he knew that George was the person with the most say and the most powerful power here. If he could convince George, then the opinions of people like Coulson would not matter. Mr. George, actually we in Hydra don't have any ill intentions towards you mutants. If you are willing to join us, Hydra, then we will open up a separate country for mutants for you, so that you mutants can thrive safely and no longer have to worry about being disturbed by these ignorant governments. Otherwise, you don't want to continue fighting like this and end up hurting your school and the students in it. Hearing Garrett's words, Coulson's expression suddenly changed. He was worried that George would be moved by Garrett's words. For mutants, Garrett's words were very attractive. Just as he was about to speak to remind George not to be fooled, he was pulled by the Black Widow's arm. Following the Black Widow's eyes, he saw Captain America and Professor X over there. Only then did he realize that with Captain America and Professor X here, how could George be deceived by Hydra? Sure enough, after hearing what Garrett said, George showed a look of disdain on his face. I can't imagine the credibility of Hydra, and there are no mutants in the world now, only superpowers. My school is not called the Mutant Academy, but the Superpower Academy. So there is no need to establish a country with only mutants. In the end, my school and students will not be hurt, only you Hydra will be hurt. If mutants develop in the future, they will be a very powerful and uncontrollable force. With Hydra's style, how can it be possible for mutants to be allowed to form a country? I'm afraid that as long as he takes his students and joins Hydra, he will be lying on Hydra's experimental table the next day. Moreover, Hydra is not a big threat to him at all. You'll regret it. Seeing George's outright refusal, Garrett knew that he couldn't be persuaded, so he had to keep his mouth shut. Now only when the school is captured can he have a chance to escape. Can they find this place? Hill and the SHIELD agents looked out the window at the gunships flying around in the sky, with worried looks in their eyes. Those armed helicopters are not only equipped with Hydra soldiers, but also various energy cannons and even small missile launchers. If they find this place, they have absolutely no chance of winning. Don't worry, even if they stay here for a year, they won't be able to find the location of the school. George was very confident in the effectiveness of the loyalty charm. I'm afraid they will cover and attack this large area indiscriminately. Coulson and Black Widow had worried looks on their faces. No matter how hidden the school is, if it is attacked indiscriminately, it will definitely be hit. The key is that many innocent residents nearby will be implicated and die. Hydra can do this kind of thing. That's right, let's get rid of them then. George nodded carelessly. The school has a magical barrier, so ordinary attacks can actually be ignored, but it is not his habit to be beaten passively. Do you want me to use a brainwave amplifier to control them? At this time, Professor X spoke. He now has level 3 top-notch psychic abilities. Although he can't compare with level 4, if he wears a brainwave amplifier and can control all the Hydra soldiers around him at once, it will still be no problem. I'm afraid not. Coulson explained awkwardly. In view of George and your professor's abilities, our shield has produced equipment to isolate brain waves. Now those Hydra soldiers probably also have isolation equipment. Because the memories of Black Widow and Coulson were modified by George before, and Professor X's abilities are well known, Nick Fury has a great sense of crisis. So he ordered SHIELD scientists to create a special device that could block brainwave intrusion as long as it was attached to the temple. SHIELD has been infiltrated by Hydra, and these technologies are naturally mastered by Hydra. Since they dare to come to the Super Academy to cause trouble, how could they not carry this device? Regarding the information about the Super Academy, there are traitors like Garrett, and Hydra knows as much as S.H.I.E.L.D. In Hydra's view, the most terrifying of the mutants at the Super Academy is not George, but the restored young Professor X. The record of Professor. As for what happened in New Mexico, S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra were busy fighting and had no idea at all. They still don't know the existence of God's domain, nor do they know Thor's identity. So for Hydra, as long as it can handle Professor X, the Super Academy is not a big problem. Now equipped with a special device that isolates brain waves, Professor X's abilities are basically useless and he no longer poses a threat. You are really... George couldn't help but twitched when he heard this. Nick Fury loved doing these things of delivering equipment to the enemy. Then just fight them head on, just like you did in God's domain. Logan showed his adamantium claws. They could beat the soldiers of the God realm, but they couldn't beat these Hydra minions. Although Tony was missing, it was not a big problem. Banner could turn into the Hulk freely, Steve's shield was also upgraded, not to mention George. Well said, it's a pity that I'm still a little short of picking up Mjolnir, otherwise I can help you solve the problem by myself. Thor punched the wall next to him with some regret. He couldn't help much without recovering his divine power. He had been reading books at school, and his body was embroidered. Don't bother so much. I'll send them a thunderbolt first. They can survive it before we talk about the next thing. George smiled and waved his hand, waved the new magic wand in his hand, and began to recite the ancient magic spell. Last time in the God realm, his ancient magic could only cover a small area. This time, the effect of the new magic wand was increased by more than 20 times, and the coverage of his ancient magic was also increased by more than 20 times. It was enough to cover all the Hydra troops near the school within the range of lightning strikes. Thunderstorm is coming. 5 minutes later, the entire area near the school was covered by dark clouds, and countless violent lightning was rolling in the dark clouds. The nearby residents and Hydra soldiers were also a little confused when they saw the sudden dark clouds in the sky. The weather forecast didn't say it would rain today. Chapter 233. You are more like Thor than I am. Sitwell, have you found them? Washington, S.H.I.E.L.D. Headquarters, Triskelion Building. Alexander Pierce, former S.H.I.E.L.D. Director, current Minister of the World Security Council, and leader of the S.H.I.E.L.D. branch of Hydra, looked at the screen in front and asked the bald agent inside. He valued Nick Fury's ability to bring S.H.I.E.L.D. to a higher level, and at the same time, he could allow Hydra hidden in S.H.I.E.L.D. to develop better. That's why he passed the position of director to Nick Fury. And the facts also prove how wise his decision was. The original S.H.I.E.L.D. was just an organization under the US government, and its level was similar to that of the CIA and the FBI. But under the operation of Nick Fury, it became the world's largest security organization. Except for a few countries, most countries have green lights all the way, and almost monitor the entire world. S.H.I.E.L.D. monitors the entire world, which is equivalent to Hydra monitoring the entire world. The technology, intelligence, and resources obtained by S.H.I.E.L.D. can be shared by Hydra, but S.H.I.E.L.D. does not have the technology, intelligence, and resources of Hydra. Therefore, Hydra's strength has always been above S.H.I.E.L.D. If it continues to develop, he can slowly turn the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. into Hydra, and let Nick Fury implement the Insight plan perfectly under his temptation. At that time, the whole world will be ruled by Hydra without noticing. Unfortunately, some problems have occurred recently. He found that Nick Fury actually began to suspect him and even investigated the entire S.H.I.E.L.D., so he had to start the plan in advance. Fortunately, many high-level government officials in various countries are agents of Hydra, so Nick Fury cannot expose his crimes through formal means and instead plays games in secret. It can only be said that he is worthy of being the strongest agent who can bring S.H.I.E.L.D. to this point. He suppressed them even though he was not dominant in all aspects. Unfortunately, he has more backups, especially the spies he planted. Finally, today he completely finished Nick Fury, and there are only 2 or 3 kittens left in S.H.I.E.L.D., which is not to be feared. However, there is another point that he is more afraid of, that is, Nick Fury suspects his source of information. The famous Professor X and the X-Men have saved the world many times. Such enemies are a huge threat to Hydra and must not be left alive. That's why he didn't kill them all, but Lord Coulson and the other small fish to lead them to find the location of the school, intending to catch them all in one fell swoop. No, we have searched the entire area, but we didn't find any traces. It seems that those mutants are really something. Pierce sneered. Directly cover the attack, blow up the entire area for me, I don't believe they won't show up. The 3 aerospace carriers have reached the final debugging stage and will be able to take off soon. They don't need to hide anymore. Bombing this area directly can be regarded as a small opening ceremony for them to rule the world. And through intelligence, it can be judged that with Professor X's character, even if those mutants have any superpowers to protect themselves from attacks, they will not remain silent for the safety of ordinary people nearby. Enemies like this are the easiest to deal with. He always believed that Professor X was the leader of the mutants, and George in the intelligence was just a deception. What about Garrett and the others? Sidwell hesitated. If there was such a blanket attack, Garrett and Grant would probably not survive. Pierce raised his eyebrows. They will feel honored to contribute their lives to the Great Hydra, and we will remember their contributions. Long live Hydra! Sidwell instantly understood what Pierce meant and hurriedly shouted a slogan. Sidwell, the weather outside is not right. At this moment, an unusually strong figure suddenly appeared on the screen. After seeing Pierce again, he immediately saluted the Hydra military. Crossbones, what does the weather mean? Sidwell showed a puzzled look on his face. The weather did not have much impact on them. The elites who came this time were well trained and could complete the mission normally even in heavy rain and blizzard. Crossbones directly pressed a button next to him, and the roof of the special car that served as the control center slowly opened, revealing the dark sky outside and the lightning jumping in the clouds. This is not like normal weather. Normal weather will not have so many lightning. On normal thunderstorm days, you will first see a flash of lightning in the sky, and then thunder will sound after a while, followed by heavy rain. But now, there is no thunder or heavy rain, and you can see dense lightning in the clouds constantly gathering and flashing, which feels extremely terrifying. Could it be those mutants who are doing this? Sidwell has read the information about mutants and knows that there was a mutant who could control weather, storms and lightning in the X-Men. It seems to be called Storm. However, the information did not say that he could control so many lightnings. Could it be an upgraded version of Storm? Attack! Attack! Thinking of this, Sidwell, who was nervous, did not dare to hesitate and quickly issued an attack order to everyone. As a result, the armed helicopters began to adjust their energy cannons to point downwards, and the tanks below also turned their muzzles. The attack order they received was to bomb inch by inch, bombing this large area several times from beginning to end. Boom! 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 The sky-shaking thunder sounded. It was not the gunships and tanks that opened fire, but the thunder and lightning from the sky that fell first. Under George's control, all the mines hit the most obvious armed helicopters and tanks. The command vehicle where Sidwell and Crossbones were, which was larger than the tank, was naturally not immune. It feels like the end of the world. Coulson and others watched as George waved his wand, and countless lightning fell like rain, hitting the aircraft and tanks continuously, with shocked looks on their faces. This feeling is like watching the gods punish mortals with thunder. If George were placed on the battlefield, which country's army could withstand such a terrible attack? George, I think you look more like the god of thunder than I do. Thor looked at the thunder and lightning in the sky and couldn't help but sigh. The last time he was in Asgard, George released much less lightning than this time. This time, he felt that even if he got Mjolnir back, he couldn't beat it with all his strength. I don't think you should be called Thor. You should be called Hammer God. Logan patted Thor and teased. Both of them are drunkards, and they often drink and brag together, so they get along very well. Chapter 234. Metal Statue Attacks. Get out of here. Looking at the command vehicle that had completely failed and was gradually collapsing under the continuous attack of lightning, Sidwell and Crossbones jumped out without hesitation. Under normal circumstances, the shell of the car is metal and the tires are insulating rubber. If it is struck by lightning, as long as the people in the car do not touch the metal objects in the car, they will generally not be hurt. However, due to the high energy of lightning, it will still cause physical damage to the vehicle, such as the body being burned, the engine being damaged, etc. George concentrated all the falling lightning on the armed helicopters, tanks, and vehicles. Each target will be attacked by more than a dozen lightning strikes at the same time, and it is still continuous. So if you don't escape in time, then once the car is damaged, you will definitely die. Similarly, those elite Hydra soldiers also discovered this problem. The Hydra soldiers on the tanks and cars jumped out of the car and hid aside, while those on the armed helicopters all parachuted to try to save their lives. Parachuting will only make you die faster. Seeing this, George adjusted his wand slightly, and all the lightning attacking the armed helicopters turned to the parachuting Hydra soldiers. So, when those Hydra soldiers landed, they all turned into charcoal. It's really different. Coulson looked at the killed Hydra soldiers and murmured in his heart. Of course, he didn't sympathize with those Hydra soldiers. As a SHIELD agent, he didn't have much sympathy for the enemy. It's just that the former X-Men rarely killed the enemy under the leadership of Professor X, but now the Superpower Academy led by George is obviously much more cruel to the enemy. If possible, I hope I won't become an enemy with this guy in the future. It's too scary. Retreat, retreat, retreat first. After Sitwell escaped from the command vehicle, he immediately issued a retreat order on the intercom, and at the same time, he and Crossbones retreated to the place outside the dark clouds. In this situation, they can't continue to fight under the attack of lightning. The key is that even if the Hydra soldiers are not afraid of death and can fight under lightning, they don't know where the enemy is. So they can only retreat first, notify the headquarters to send combat uniforms that can insulate lightning, and then continue the next battle plan. Professor. George turned his head to look at Professor X, who came over and put his hand on George's shoulder, and together with George, he activated his psychic power and spread out of the school. Although the Hydra soldiers all carried brainwave shielding equipment and would not be controlled by psychic power, it didn't matter. He asked Professor X to help not to control the retreating Hydra soldiers. But it played a positioning effect. Boom. 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 After George adjusted the direction again, the lightning began to disperse and attack the heads of the retreating Hydra soldiers below. One by one, the Hydra soldiers fled frantically towards the dark clouds, but before they escaped the coverage area, they were chased by lightning. No matter how fast they ran, they could not outrun the speed of lightning. The physical fitness of these Hydra soldiers was much stronger than that of ordinary people, but compared with the soldiers of the God's domain, the gap was huge. Even the soldiers of the God's domain would tremble all over after being electrocuted by his lightning. These Hydra soldiers were basically electrocuted to death after 2 or 3 lightning strikes. Large-scale attack magic may not be a threat to people with strong individual strength, but it is very deadly to these ordinary people. Of course, not all Hydra soldiers were killed by lightning. In the end, some people escaped from the range covered by the dark clouds and survived by chance. Among them were Sitwell and Crossbones, as well as the Winter Soldiers whose bodies had been modified and were not inferior to Captain America in all aspects. However, the reason why they were able to escape was mainly because George wanted to capture them alive and did not deliberately target them. Otherwise, hundreds of lightning bolts would hit one person at the same time, and even the Winter Soldiers would have to lie down. Go! Stopping the wand and putting away the ancient magic, George ordered the metal statues standing in the school. Suddenly, the metal statues that were originally lifeless opened their eyes, made all kinds of strange roars, and ran wildly towards the outside of the school. The order they received was to bring back the last Hydra that escaped. George sometimes felt that the magic of mimicry and deformation was quite idealistic. It was not like the awakening spell, which only opened the spiritual wisdom of inanimate creatures, and it also gave them some special abilities. And these abilities actually came from George's heart. Just like he mimicked and deformed a metal statue in the shape of a fire dragon, the metal fire dragon could really flap its wings and fly, and it could also roar like a fire dragon. Under normal circumstances, such a large piece of metal would not be able to fly even if it had 100 pairs of wings, let alone a pair of wings. If this spell is studied thoroughly in the future, George thinks that maybe every kind of metal statue can really exert the ability he thinks it should have. For example, the metal statue of the 9-tailed fox can charm, the metal statue of the phoenix can be reborn, and the 3-headed dog of hell can devour souls, etc. In fact, the magician named Sun Long of Morgana's faction has already touched on it a little bit, and can transform the ordinary cloth dragon mimicry into a real dragon, and can spit flames to attack. These statues are actually alive. Coulson and others were shocked again when they looked at the metal statues flying away. When they followed George into the school, they saw those 4 or 5 meter high metal statues, but they didn't expect that those metal statues were alive and could fight according to George's orders. Fighting against the 4 or 5 meter high metal statues, they had already begun to mourn for those Hydra soldiers. If the 4 or 5 meter high metal statues were solid, they would weigh at least 100 tons. If they were in close combat, it would probably be a mess, and the transformed winter soldiers were no exception. As for ordinary firearms, they couldn't break the defense when hitting metal statues, unless they were energy weapons developed by Hydra first, which might have some effect. The facts were actually similar to what Carlson and the others expected, except that George used the best defensive alloys to make metal statues, so even energy weapons would cause little damage to metal statues. The key is that even if there is damage, as long as it is not completely broken, it will not affect the battle. So soon, they saw Sitwell, Crossbones, and those winter soldiers, with bruised noses and swollen faces being caught by various metal statues, and came to the square in front of the school. Next time I go to Wakanda, I'll get some vibranium to make metal statues, so that they have strong defense. Looking at the small holes on some metal statues that were blasted by energy cannons, George thought to himself. Ordinary energy guns basically pose no threat to metal statues, but high-power energy cannons can still do a lot of damage. But if we use vibranium instead, then the defense will be maxed out. I had a hangover last night, so I'll update twice today and resume tomorrow. Chapter 235. Clues to the Cosmic Cube. Babaji. Steve was so shocked when he saw Bucky being wrapped by the metal nine-tailed fox with its metal tail that his shield fell to the ground. Then he rushed forward in one step. Seeing this, George waved his hand and let the metal nine-tailed fox put Bucky on the ground. Bucky, you are not dead. This is so good. Ouch. Steve went forward and hugged Bucky, feeling so excited. In addition to his beloved woman Carter, the most important thing in his heart is his brother Bucky, who grew up with him and went through life and death together. Originally thought that Bucky had died in that mission, but he didn't expect to meet again after more than 60 years of freezing. How could he not be happy? Unfortunately, he knew Bucky, but Bucky, who was brainwashed and had his memory erased, didn't recognize him. He immediately used his mechanical arm to punch him hard on the chin. If Steve's body was not beyond that of an ordinary person would probably have his entire chin shattered by this blow. After knocking Steve away, Bucky turned around and quickly fled to the school gate. Bucky was brainwashed and his memory was wiped, but his IQ was still online. Knowing that he was no match for his opponent, he naturally ran away first. George. Seeing Bucky's figure gradually disappearing, and the metal statues did not chase him, Carlson and the others became anxious. But George waved his hand. It doesn't matter, he can't escape. Boy, you can go out, ask me, the guard first. As soon as George finished speaking, a roar came from the guard room at the school gate. It was the guard Colonel Brinsky, who turned into the abomination and walked out. Seeing Bucky, who wanted to jump directly from the school gate, he immediately raised his hand and grabbed him in his hand, and then walked back with Bucky in big strides. I didn't expect it to be him. When Carlson saw the abomination, he immediately recognized his identity. What happened to the abomination, the Hulk, and George on Broadway was recorded in detail by S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. thought that abomination had been killed by George, but he turned out to be the school's security guard. Because of that incident, General Ross had been bothering Nick Fury for a long time, hoping that Nick Fury could contact George to hand over the Hulk and abomination. In the end, Nick Fury had to take out some black materials and illegal experiments collected by S.H.I.E.L.D. about General Ross to make him shut up temporarily. He should have been brainwashed by Hydra's people using some machine. Professor, please help him recover. George greeted Professor X and came to Sitwell. Sitwell should be considered a high-level agent in Hydra. Most of the subversion work of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents was done by him, and he also knew a lot of secrets about Hydra. Laid ends. Reaching out and pressing on Sitwell's head, George used his psychic ability to launch the Legilimency spell. Garrett was a defected agent. He was not completely trusted by Hydra. He did not know many secrets, such as the location of the energy weapon made by Hydra using the Cosmic Cube. Found it. After a moment, George smiled and retracted his hand. He had found the location of the Cosmic Cube from Sitwell's memory. Compared with Hydra and Hydra's insight plan, he cared more about the Space Stone, one of the 6 Infinity Stones. His idea was that since Hydra could use machines to extract the energy of the space stone to make energy weapons, he could also use the machine to extract energy to see if he could use it for meditation. If he could, he would have a magic crystal with infinite energy. If not, the extracted energy could be used in the construction of the school. In the future, it could also be used as an energy device to build a floating city and convert it into electricity to supply the entire floating city. Besides, the space stone was safer in his hands. Even if Loki escapes from the prison in the God Realm in the future and repeats the same mistake and gets involved with Thanos, and wants to come to Earth to find the Cosmic Cube, he must first pass this level. If the Cosmic Cube cannot be obtained, the Chitauri army cannot be transferred here. How is it? Seeing George check Sitwell's memory, Natasha and Coulson hurriedly came forward. George replied calmly. According to this Sitwell's memory, the 3 air and space carriers will take off in about an hour. There is only 1 hour left, so we must set off immediately. The expressions of the 4 remaining senior agents, Black Widow, Coulson, Hill, and Hawkeye, immediately became serious. It takes about an hour to fly from New York to Washington. If you don't set off, everything will be over when the 3 air and space carriers are in the air. Each air and space carrier not only has the world's most advanced weapon system, but also has stealth and anti-reconnaissance capabilities. Once it takes off successfully, it is impossible to find their location. At that time, you can only passively take a beating below. Professor, what's going on? George didn't answer, but turned to look at Professor X. Professor X took his hand away from Bucky's forehead and made an oak gesture to George. Okay, let Steve lead the team, plus the normal Bucky, Banner, and Logan. You can take the X-Fighter and arrive in Washington in half an hour. Turning to look at Natasha and Coulson. Did I overuse my power just now? I need to rest for a while, so I won't help. Using the ability transition is just an excuse. He wants to take the opportunity to go to Hydra's base for manufacturing energy weapons and take away the Cosmic Cube and the machine that can extract the energy of the Cosmic Cube. You don't look like you've overused your abilities, do you? Coulson looked at George, who had a ruddy complexion and a loud voice, and murmured to himself. It's not like he has never been in contact with superpowers. After the superpowers' abilities are overused, they can't even stand firmly. And George is obviously not, but to be honest, it is really unreasonable to use such a wide range of abilities just now and still have nothing to do. So although he had doubts in his heart, he didn't say it out loud. After all, the idol Captain America leads the team to help, as well as the once famous Wolverine, the Hulk who can defeat General Ross's entire army, and the Winter Soldier who knows the details of Hydra. They definitely have a chance of winning, and George has indeed helped a lot. With Hydra's most elite team wiped out, it's estimated that there won't be much defense at the Tri-Curved Wing building. Thank you very much. If S.H.I.E.L.D. is still there afterwards, if there is anything you need our help with, we will definitely help. Before Nick Fury died, he had handed over the cube, which symbolized all the secret base information of S.H.I.E.L.D., to Coulson, which meant that the position of Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. was passed to Coulson. After this incident is over, if S.H.I.E.L.D. still exists, Coulson will be the new Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Chapter 236. How is this possible? The whole army was wiped out, and even the Winter Soldiers didn't escape. In the Triskelion building, Pierce looked at the screen that had turned into snowflakes, with anger and horror on his face. He didn't expect that a mere mutant school could have such terrible strength. The most elite troops under his command that could defeat S.H.I.E.L.D. carried a large number of energy weapons, and there were more than 30 Winter Soldiers comparable to Captain America. In such a short time, it seemed as if they had evaporated from the face of the earth, and there was no news. Could it be that George? At this time, Pierce suddenly thought of the George he had ignored before. Before, he just thought that George was a puppet pushed to the stage by Professor X, and the real leader of the Superpower Academy, which was the previous Mutant Academy, was still Professor X. The most powerful mutant in the Superpower Academy was also Professor X. But when they used an instrument to isolate brainwaves and Professor X's ability had been abolished, they still suffered a terrible large-scale lightning attack. It shows that there is another mutant in the Superpower Academy who is not inferior to Professor X. All the information about Wolverine Logan is available, and the rest are just kids. The only possible one is George, the principal in public. So he might have made a mistake. George is the real leader of the Superpower Academy and the most powerful mutant in the Superpower Academy. Go, inform Dr. Zora to send all the newly developed robot soldiers here for defense. After the Queen's robot soldier incident, S.H.I.E.L.D. got some information about Anton Vanko's manufacturing of robot soldiers, and these information naturally entered the Hydra database. With Hydra's technical level that surpassed S.H.I.E.L.D., it quickly copied a batch of similar Hydra robots. But because things have been going smoothly here and Nick Fury was killed by him, he didn't use this trump card. Those manufactured Hydra robots were placed in the base guarding the Cosmic Cube, under the unified command of Dr. Zora. Now is the critical moment for the aerospace carrier to take off. In order to prevent Coulson's remaining trash from taking the group of mutants from the Superpower Academy to counterattack the Triskelion, they can only be transferred here to defend first. I should have ignored those mutants. After giving the order, Pierce couldn't help but feel a little regretful. If he knew that this would be the consequence, he should have tried his best to capture Coulson and other agents alive, waited for the aerospace carrier to take off and control the entire world, and then brainwashed them and found the location of the Superpower Academy. This is the safest way. The main reason is that he was careless. After capturing the Triskelion building and killing Nick Fury, he became arrogant and thought that there was nothing to worry about in the Superpower Academy with only a few adult mutants. It can be solved at the same time, and it can also prevent them from making trouble at the critical moment. No, this is still not safe. I need to borrow some people from that guy Strat. Walking back and forth in the office for a few steps, Pierce still felt uneasy, and used the communicator to contact Baron Strat, another big boss of Hydra. Hydra is a whole, spread all over the world, but it is not completely unified, and there are many large and small branches. He is a branch of Hydra developed by Zora's Red Skull remnants. He is mainly rooted in SHIELD and grows stronger by sucking S.H.I.E.L.D's blood. He has always wanted to use Zora's algorithm and the Insight plan to let Hydra rule the world. Baron Strat is the leader of another branch. His headquarters is currently rooted in Sokovia. He mainly wants to let Hydra rule the world by superpowers through research and experiments. Everyone has the same goal, but the methods are different. Usually, they will definitely help each other if they can, but they will not become vassals of each other. So he launched the Eye of Insight plan. After the leaders of other branches knew about it, they also provided him with some help in various aspects, but did not personally bring everyone to help directly. He has a good relationship with Baron Strat. At the beginning, the research base in Sokovia was bought by him in the name of SHIELD for Baron Strat. So it should not be a big problem to ask Baron Strat to borrow a few superpowers to help. Superpowers fight mutants, so he will feel more at ease. Okay, no problem. I'll send a few of the most powerful superpowers to help you. In the Hydra base in Sokovia, Baron Strat waved his newly updated mechanical right hand Satan's Claw twice, hung up the phone, and ordered his men next to him. Let Jia Ying come over. A moment later, a young woman with an Asian face came to Baron Strat. Lord Baron, what do you want? Let Gordon take the most powerful warriors in your tribe to Pierce. By the way, let your daughter Daisy go too. I heard that her ability is very powerful after being developed. Strat looked at the woman below and narrowed his eyes. Jia Ying, you have to know that if it weren't for me, you would have been dismembered by Dr. Reinhardt. So I hope you don't have any other little thoughts and be loyal to me. When Hydra rules the world, I will give you a special land to live on, and you can slowly find all your people, don't worry about being rejected by the world. Long live Hydra, we will definitely be loyal to the Baron. Jia Ying shouted out Hydra's slogan firmly. Strat nodded with satisfaction and asked Jia Ying to retreat. After Jia Ying returned to her room, she cautiously breathed a sigh of relief. She is a member of the Inhuman race and possesses the ability to live forever, so she has been leading some of the remaining Inhumans on Earth in the afterlife and is working hard to find other Inhumans with Inhuman genes. During World War II, because she left the afterlife to look for aliens, she was caught by Hydra's Werner Reinhardt for experimentation, and the obelisk was also taken away. The obelisk contains mist crystals, which allow aliens with alien genes to activate superpowers, but ordinary people will be petrified and die if they touch the obelisk. Fortunately, Reinhardt was quickly defeated by the Howling Commandos led by Carter, and she was freed. In 1989, while she was out searching for aliens with alien genes, she accidentally fell in love with an ordinary human doctor and had a child with him. She wanted to leave the future and live an ordinary life. But it fell into the hands of Hydra again. Hydra discovered that 44 years later, Jia Ying's appearance had not changed at all, and knew that she was extraordinary. Reinhard originally wanted to dissect Jia Ying for research and find out the secret of his immortality, but was stopped by Baron Stella. Chapter 237, Base on Isolated Island. Baron Strat doesn't care about immortality, because he basically stopped aging after his resurrection. He cares about the afterlife behind Jia Ying, where there are many aliens. Under the threat of her husband Calvin and daughter Daisy's life, Jia Ying finally compromised and told the location of the afterlife. Baron Strat personally led his Hydra soldiers to raid the afterlife. After a fight, he successfully captured all the aliens in the afterlife. The situation of aliens and mutants is similar. Except for a few, most aliens have superpowers, but their superpowers are not combat effective at all. In addition, there are many families of aliens from past generations living there, and those people are also not combat effective. So when the Hydra army came to the afterlife and held their leader Jia Ying hostage, basically all the aliens surrendered without much resistance. However, when Baron Strat conducted experiments on aliens, he found that he could not replicate the aliens' superpowers at all, and was disappointed after understanding the series of relationships between alien genes and crystals. Because that means he can't replicate soldiers with specific superpowers on a large scale. Finally, Baron Strat took away the relatives of every inhuman in the afterlife and scattered them in various unknown places as hostages, so that Jia Ying and the inhumans in the afterlife would serve him. "Gordon, take me to the afterlife." Picked up the special phone in the room and called the afterlife, and an eyeless man instantly appeared in her room. The eyeless man was named Gordon, and he had the superpowers of sensing inhumans and teleporting. Gordon grabbed Jia Ying's hand and instantly took her back to the afterlife where the inhumans lived for generations. Jia Ying summoned several inhumans with combat abilities, conveyed to them the tasks assigned by Baron Strat, and finally reminded them. "Remember, the success or failure of the mission is not important, the most important thing is to save your life. Gordon, if you see that the situation is not good, take them and escape directly, I will deal with Baron Strat. And Daisy, although your ability is powerful, you cannot control it perfectly, so you must be careful at that time." After the instructions, Gordon teleported Jia Ying back to the Hydra base in Sokovia, and then brought the inhumans including Daisy to the Triskelion building in Washington one by one. On the other side, after Coulson and Captain America and others left in the X-Fighter, George explained a few words to Professor X, and then disappeared in the school. Naturally, he wanted to take the opportunity to go to the Hydra base and seize the Cosmic Cube. The base where Hydra made energy weapons and hid the Cosmic Cube was on an isolated island on the sea not far from Washington. George first apparat to the seaside, then spread his wings and flew towards the isolated island. Since the flying speed of the wing magic is limited, he also used magnetism to accelerate his flight. There are many ways. For example, he applied the current 10 tons of force to the iron sheet on the sole of the shoe, gliding along the Earth's magnetic field lines, creating recoil against the ground, manipulating the gravity factor, etc. In short, with all kinds of additions, his flying speed has reached supersonic speed. Fortunately, his body has long surpassed the limit of ordinary people, otherwise, if he flies at this speed, his body will not be able to hold it first. Unless he puts on the iron armor spell, but that will definitely increase the resistance, thus affecting the flying speed. In terms of flying speed, Tony's suit is still faster. At this time, George couldn't help but think of Iron Man's iron suit. According to Tony's words when he asked Tony to order the metal model last time, after obtaining some technology from the God Realm, his iron suit has been upgraded to Mach 4 in terms of flying speed. "When I have time, I will also make some magic battle suit." Recently, he has been looking for Urza to learn the knight's change of clothes in the magic of changing clothes, that is, he can wear the armor placed in the change space on his body instantly. So if he can make magic armor, he can also wear it instantly, which is very convenient. Under supersonic flight, because of the specific coordinates, he soon found the isolated island and saw various buildings with Hydra logos on the isolated island. At this time, a large ship was parked at the dock of the isolated island. The Hydra soldiers were carrying the newly made energy weapons in boxes onto the ship, probably to be transported to Hydra bases in various places. Invisible. Instead of attacking directly, George first put an illusion spell on himself to make himself invisible, and then followed the Hydra soldiers, sneaking all the way into the base openly. Hey, strange, why don't I see Hydra's robot guards? He remembered that in Sitwell's memory, Pierce used some of Vang's technology obtained from S.H.I.E.L.D. to let Dr. Zora create a lot of Hydra robot soldiers of his own. These Hydra robot soldiers are basically guarding the cosmic cube on this isolated island. However, he didn't see any of them along the way. However, he didn't care. For his superpowers, robot soldiers were simply his natural enemy. With his current magnetic level that can control 10 tons of metal, any robot will be dismembered in an instant in front of them, without any ability to resist. Alaho open. Walking to the deepest part of the base, he used the unlocking spell to open several steel doors in succession, and finally saw the cosmic cube that was being continuously drained of energy. Woo! 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 However, at this moment, the entire base suddenly sounded a piercing alarm. George had been discovered. It's even equipped with a heat sensor. The defense is really tight. After putting away the disillusionment spell, he was not anxious because of the alarm. He walked to the machine that extracts the energy of the cosmic cube. This machine continuously extracts the energy of the cosmic cube, converts it into blue stable energy, puts it in sealed glass jars, and transmits it to the room behind through a conveyor belt. He picked up a glass jar from the conveyor belt, opened it with his hand, closed his eyes and began to meditate to try to absorb the energy in it. After a while, he smiled and opened his eyes. It works. The blue energy in this glass jar can be absorbed by him through meditation like a magic crystal to enhance his magic power. Who is it? At this time, a small group of Hydra soldiers also rushed into the room with energy guns. When they saw George, they immediately raised their hands to shoot. As a result, before they pressed the trigger, they found that the energy gun in their hands was forced out of their hands and shot them mercilessly at their own heads. Although the energy gun uses energy to attack, the gun itself is also made of metal. As long as there is metal, it will be controlled by George. Ignoring the small group of dead Hydra soldiers, George turned off the machine switch, took out a small box from the dressing space, and began to put the entire machine and the cosmic cube into the box. Chapter 238. Fly around. After collecting the cosmic cube and the machine that extracted it, George followed the conveyor belt and put the glass jars containing blue energy into the box one by one. During this period, a large number of heavily armed Hydra soldiers tried to stop him, but they all fell to the energy guns in their own hands. As for those energy guns, George also put them in the box. This kind of weapon that uses the cosmic cube as its attack energy is very powerful. Even if it is placed in the universe, it is still a good weapon. If he does not use it in the future, it can be used by others. Who is this guy? In the office of the base, Dr. Zola has become one with the robot. Through the picture transmitted by the monitor, we saw George taking away the cosmic cube and the machine as if he were in no one's land, killing all the Hydra soldiers who rushed over. I was also shocked that snowflakes appeared on the monitor and small smoke emitted from the CPU. He quickly entered Hydra's intelligence library and began searching for information about George. Principal of the Super Academy, Pierce borrowed the robot soldier because he has the abilities of Magneto and Professor X, and can also summon lightning. After a while, all the information about George entered his memory. You must not lose the cosmic cube. Although she knew how powerful George was, Zola was still unwilling to give up just like that. He had been planning for so many years and finally got the cosmic cube in his hands again. He had just started researching it, how could it be snatched away like that? And in the later stage, if Hydra wants to completely rule the Earth and stabilize its political power, various powerful energy weapons are absolutely indispensable. Without the cosmic cube, there would be no energy of the cosmic cube. An energy weapon without energy is just a metal rod. Cal Creel, go deal with the intruder, remember he can control metal, don't transform into metal. Carl Creel, once a boxer in Hell's Kitchen, was almost thrown into the sea to feed the sharks because he lost a match he should have won, causing his boss a huge loss. But he accidentally awakened the ability to change the molecular structure of the body through contact, and was monitored by S.H.I.E.L.D. as a superpower. Later, he was recruited by Hydra, strengthened his abilities through experiments, and became Dr. Zola's bodyguard, nicknamed Absorbing Man. Zola believes that as long as the absorber does not transform into metal, George's ability to control metal cannot affect the absorber. Moreover, when the absorber changes the molecular structure of the body, it also has the effect of isolating the mind and will not be affected by psychic abilities. With the help of other Hydra soldiers, there is no chance of winning. Everything is done, let's deal with Dr. Zola next. After collecting all the glass energy bottles and those energy weapons, George used the tracking spell to start tracking the location of Dr. Zola. He must get rid of scientists like Zola, otherwise he might create some troublesome black technology in the future. The most important thing in the Marvel world cannot be underestimated are scientists, especially scientists on Earth. Even though they are just intellectuals engaged in scientific research, they may be able to give you a big crisis at any time. Many Marvel villains are scientists. Like Bolivar Trask, who created the Sentinel robot, the omnipotent god Doom, Dr. Octopus, Dr. Lizard, Green Goblin, etc. Although Zola has been fused with the robot, as long as his soul is still there, he cannot escape the law of the tracking spell. The footprints appear anim Zola. As the spell took effect, golden traces pointing directly to Zola's position soon appeared in front of George. Following the traces, he would find Zola. However, before he could get very far, a large group of Hydra soldiers stopped him. Instead of holding energy weapons, these Hydra soldiers held up non-metallic shields one by one and charged crazily towards George. George didn't pay attention and directly controlled the energy gun floating next to him and started shooting at the Hydra soldiers. Zola must have discovered his identity and learned some information about him, so he asked these Hydra soldiers to use non-metallic shields to defend themselves against approaching him, hoping to kill him in close combat. But those non-metallic shields were obviously not special shields. They were improvised non-metallic but relatively defensive things, many of which were holding solid wooden doors. Naturally, these makeshift shields are not very effective against energy guns. So before he even got close to George, most of him had already been killed by the energy gun. 20 million volts of electric shock. When the remaining Hydras approached George's body and thought they finally saw some hope, a large amount of electric shocks suddenly erupted from George's body, instantly knocking everyone to the ground. However, just when he was about to move forward, he unexpectedly felt a fist coming from behind, and his body immediately turned sideways to avoid it. There are actually some fish that slipped through the net and escaped my telepathy. Appearing in front of him was a strong man wearing a Hydra soldier combat uniform, but with skin like rubber on his face. Seeing that George had dodged his attack, the strong man had no intention of stopping. He punched one after another and launched a series of attacks towards George very skillfully. It's a pity that George not only has magic and superpowers, but his body is also far beyond ordinary people, especially his neurological reaction ability. He dodged the strong man's attack very calmly. He was just a little surprised that even though this strong man could withstand an electric shock of 200 million volts, he could still isolate his telepathy. Normally, if someone near him had malicious intentions and wanted to make a sneak attack, his telepathy would be able to sense it immediately. But just now, the strong man fainted and fell to the ground, but he didn't notice it. It seems he is also a person with superpowers. After having a guess in his mind, he stopped joking and retreated to avoid the attack. George took out a coin and bounced it. Electromagnetic gun. The coin carried the electric light and hit the strong man at supersonic speed. The strong man was directly hit and flew out, hitting the wall of the base hard, with a fist-sized hole in his chest. He's not dead yet. But what surprised George was that under such circumstances, the other party did not die. Instead, the hole in his chest slowly healed and returned to its original state. It hurts so much, I want to kill you. The strong man roared, took out a small piece of granite from his pocket, activated his power, and his body instantly transformed into the hardest granite form, and jumped towards George. It turns out to be absorbing people. Seeing the strong man's body transformed from rubber to granite, George immediately guessed the identity of the other party. So he took out his magic wand and chanted a curse at the absorber falling from the sky. Avada Kedavra. The green magic light beam accurately hit the absorber. The absorber instantly returned from the granite state to normal, then closed his eyes and fell to the ground, losing the breath of life. Chapter 239. Consciousness Storage Device. It's kind of interesting, but that's about it. George kicked the dead absorber body away, then looked up at the monitor in the upper right corner and smiled. Dr. Zola, if you have any other trump cards, come out quickly, otherwise you won't have a chance in a while. How could this happen? What kind of ability is this? Why did the absorber die without even blocking it? Zola looked at George's smile on the monitor, and her consciousness couldn't help but tremble a little. Damn it! Trump card, where does he have any trump card? I will repay the humiliation 100-fold next time. Zola no longer hesitated, turned around and activated her body's flying device, jumped out of the window and flew out of the island. Although he has a consciousness storage device, after this body is damaged, his consciousness can be immediately uploaded to a storage device prepared in advance through the network, and then the consciousness storage device can be installed in the spare robot body. This enables unlimited resurrections. But it doesn't come at any cost. First of all, the production of consciousness storage is quite complicated, which requires a lot of time and preparation work in advance. Once he uses this method, he will have to spend a long time on creating the next consciousness reserve to prevent him from being unable to resurrect when he is killed. Secondly, every time his consciousness is transferred, his consciousness will weaken for a long time before he can return to normal. So he didn't want to harm the robot body unless it was absolutely necessary. In fact, his robot body is not weak, and it has various weapon systems. Recently, the energy of the cosmic Rubik's Cube has been added as an energy source, and it is loaded with powerful energy weapons. Much stronger than those mass-produced Hydra soldiers. According to his calculations, his chance of winning against Iron Man alone could reach over 80%. But the opponent can control the metal, which just restrains him and makes him unable to fight at all. However, just as he flew over the base and was about to speed up his escape, he suddenly found that his body could not move. Dr. Zola, where are you going? At the same time, George's voice came from behind him. It turned out that George saw the direction of the tracking spell suddenly change, pointing in the direction outside the base, and he didn't know that Zola was going to escape. And it just so happened that his eyesight was surprisingly good. When he came to the window, he saw Zola above the base at a glance, so he directly operated to behind Zola and controlled him with his abilities. The ability to control metal is simply incompetent for people on the normal technology side. Long live Hydra! Finding that her body could not move, and George came to her, Zola knew that she had to give up this body. But before giving up this body, he still had to make a final counterattack. Because it can transfer consciousness, he has already set up a self-destruction device in the robot's body. Once he encounters an invincible enemy, he can take advantage of the opponent's last carelessness and kill the opponent at the cost of the machine's body self-destructing. However, George's reaction was also quick. When he heard Zora shouting "Long live Hydra," he realized something was wrong. While controlling Zola's robot body, he waved his wand and cast a freezing spell. All settled. In an instant, all the parts inside the robot seemed to be suspended in time, completely in a frozen state. Only Zola's consciousness on the robot's chest monitor could continue to move. How could this happen? Even the self-destruction device can't be used. Zola's consciousness was also a little panicked at this time. Because he found that he had completely lost control of the robot's body. Not to mention turning on the self-destruction device, he could not even leave this body and actively upload his consciousness to the consciousness reserve device. Originally, as long as this body was destroyed, his consciousness would be automatically uploaded to the consciousness reserve, or it could be uploaded when he voluntarily gave up this body. But now that he has lost control of the machine, he is like a prisoner, tightly trapped in the robot body. Fortunately, his psychic abilities can only be effective on living creatures. At this time, Zola could only be grateful that George inherited Professor X's psychic ability. According to the data, it could not have an effect on the computer. Therefore, it is impossible to read his mind and understand his current situation. For a while, as long as he deliberately provokes the other party to destroy his body, his consciousness can escape from this body, enter the consciousness reservoir, and be resurrected elsewhere. Unfortunately, he miscalculated once again. After George fixed Zola, he reached out and touched Zola's robot body, using electromagnetic abilities to invade. Professor Misaka Mikoto's electromagnetic ability can control electrons, thereby interpreting all program rehearsals and breaking through all firewalls. She can directly hack into computers without using cables. She can hack electronic devices directly through electrical signals or electronic operations, and even use communication lines to destroy electronic devices. You can operate a computer or PDA just by touching it. As long as you transfer the thoughts that appear in your head to the machine, the computer will process them as you like. And George inherited Misaka Mikoto's electromagnetic ability and can do the same thing. So that's it. After a moment, George took his hand away from Dr. Zora, and he had already understood all the information and intelligence stored in Dr. Zora's mind. Since there is consciousness, there must be a soul. If there is a soul, it will be easy to deal with. Looking at Zora's consciousness in the display on the robot's chest, he raised his hand and cast the Kedavra again. Avada Kedavra. A green light hit the robot, and Zora's consciousness in the display began to dissipate. How could this happen? It's impossible, my consciousness. He thought that even if George didn't destroy his body and kept it the same, he would at most be imprisoned here, and there would always be a chance to escape in the future. Unexpectedly, George could actually kill his consciousness directly, making him completely dead, and there was no possibility of uploading the consciousness storage device to revive. Fortunately, there is a magic called the Kedavra that targets soul consciousness, otherwise it would be difficult to deal with him. In a case like Dr. Zora, it is actually very difficult to kill him completely under normal circumstances. Because no matter how many bodies you destroy, his consciousness can exist through the network, and then enter other robot bodies to revive. This is somewhat similar to Ultron. But as long as there is consciousness and wisdom, it means that the soul must be born. Once the soul is born, magic targeting the soul can be used. This is the good thing about magicians. They are comprehensive enough. No matter what kind of enemy you are, there is a way to deal with it. Chapter 240, Attack and Defense of the Three-Wing Building. This base doesn't need to exist anymore. After getting the Cosmic Cube, solving the problem with Dr. Zora, and obtaining all the information stored by Dr. Zora, the goal of this trip has basically been exceeded. Now we need to finish the job. Thunder explosion. Floating above the base, George waved his wand and threw out one explosive spell after another. The explosive power of a normal adult wizard can blow up several houses, while a wizard like Pettigrew, who is at the top of the list, can blow up the entire street. George's current explosive spell level is higher than that of an average adult wizard due to frequent practice, but lower than that of a first-class wizard like Pettigrew. But because of the more than 20 times bonus effect of the wand, the power has reached the level of top wizards, and the effect is very impressive. With just a few explosive spells, the entire Hydra base has become a ruin. When leaving the island, he caught up with the large ship that Hydra had just transported the energy weapons, hijacked all the energy weapons, and let the entire ship and the Hydra soldiers on the ship feed the fish together. Let's go to Washington and have a look. Originally, George thought that with Captain America, Wolverine, the Hulk, and the Winter Soldier, plus the cooperation of Coulson and others, it should be no problem to deal with Pierce. After all, in the movie, Captain America, Falcon, and Black Widow solved the problem. But through Zora's intelligence, not only a large number of Hydra robots went to help, but Pierce might even have superpowers like absorbing man. So he thought it would be safer to go and have a look. The Insight plan is doomed to fail. Once the 3 aircraft carriers go up to the sky to clear the world of danger, it will be shot down. The Earth is full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers, hiding many powerful beings. Since it is destined to be shot down, it is better to let the people of the Superpower Academy shoot it down instead of letting others shoot it down, so that at least the Superpower Academy can show up in front of the top leaders of all countries in the world. Hydra's Insight plan is not only aimed at the United States, but all countries in the world. At that time, all countries will be attacked by airstrikes from aerospace aircraft carriers. Therefore, the Superpower Academy has made efforts to solve this matter. On the one hand, it has won the favor of the top leaders of various countries, and on the other hand, it has also demonstrated the strength of the Superpower Academy. In this way, when the Superpower Academy is released in the later stage, it can also save a lot of unnecessary troubles. Of course, these are things that come with the hand. If you encounter them, you can do them. It doesn't matter if you don't do them. There is no need to spend a lot of time running around to establish good relations with the top leaders of various countries. The main focus should still be on improving one's own strength. He always believes that as long as the strength is strong enough, everything else is not a problem. When he can destroy a planet with one blow, I believe that the top leaders of all countries in the world will not dare to fart when they see him, not to mention the messy government agencies below. But his goal is not just that, he has a greater ideal. The Earth is just a planet. There are countless planets and countless cosmic civilizations outside the Earth. There are many other universes outside the universe. And outside the Marvel world composed of these countless universes, there are also countless worlds. So his goal is not only the sea of stars, but the heavens and the worlds. Only by occupying a place in the heavens and the worlds can he be considered to have some confidence. After apparition to the nearest location to Washington, he began to accelerate to fly towards the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. On the other side, after half an hour of rapid flight, the X-Fighter also arrived near the Triskelion building of S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. What are those, robots? Looking at the hundreds of armored robots engraved with the Hydra logo that guarded the Triskelion building tightly, Coulson and others were also a little dumbfounded. They really didn't know that Hydra had actually made so many robots. The key is to look at the weapons used by those robots, which are not ordinary weapons, but energy weapons. The original plan is invalid. It seems that we have to formulate a new battle plan. Captain America Steve couldn't help but frowned. In fact, according to the original plan, when he arrived at the place, he only had to push all the way at the fastest speed to take down all the Hydra soldiers and Leader Pierce in the building, and naturally there would be no need to worry about the 3 airspace aircraft carriers taking off. All the Winter Soldiers and the most elite soldiers under Pierce were dealt with by George alone at the S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy, and the defense strength of the Triskelion building was greatly reduced. With the Hulk leading the charge, it was not difficult for them to push forward. But now it seems that Pierce still has a backup plan. Maybe there are other defensive means besides robot soldiers, so they have to make a more cautious battle plan next. Logan, you have a good relationship with Stark, contact him and see if he can spare time to come and help. He has more experience in dealing with those robots. Coulson, continue to contact the government to see if you can get the nearest army to come to assist. Then we will split into 2 groups. Steve's battle plan is not difficult to understand or complicated, but it is also the most practical plan at this moment. In a while, he, Logan, and Banner will launch an attack on the Triskelion building head-on. He has a shield, Logan has an immortal body, and Banner's Hulk can withstand energy cannons. The 3 of them push forward and attract all the firepower of Hydra. Then Coulson, Bucky, and others who are familiar with S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra approached the building from a completely different direction with the help of the X-Fighter's cloaking device, and then sneaked into the building as quietly as possible. Find the control room that controls the takeoff of the aerospace carrier and turn off the takeoff program of the aerospace carrier. If Tony can arrive in time during this period, it would be best if the nearby army can provide some assistance. Pierce must know that they will come to stop the aerospace carrier from taking off, and sooner or later they will find out the infiltration of Coulson and others. At that time, it depends on how Pierce judges. If they try their best to stop the 3 of them, Coulson and others will have a chance to complete the mission. If some robots are diverted to the back to stop Coulson and others, the pressure here will be less, and the 3 of them will have a chance to break through and enter the building. They don't need to find any control room, just find 3 huge aerospace carriers that cannot be hidden, and then destroy the aerospace carrier itself. The Hulk's ability to dismantle things is first class, and Wolverine's adamantium claws can also easily tear the aerospace carrier. As for him, the shield that was reforged by the Dwarf King by fusing URU metal not only has the ability to be thrown out and recalled, but is also much sharper than before, and can also be used as a cutting weapon after being thrown out. Since everyone has no objection, let's act. After listening to Steve's battle plan, no one had any objection, so the attack and defense of the Triskelion building began. Chapter 241. This is not good. Banner. Dr. Banner, who transformed into the Hulk, jumped up, stretched out his hands to grab the 2 Hydra robots patrolling in the air, and slapped them hard in the middle, destroying the 2 robots. Thanks to Odin's divine power, Banner and Hulk's consciousness were completely integrated, and they could switch freely between Hulk and Banner. So the current Hulk has both Hulk's body and Banner's brain, but it is a little bigger than the body of Banner and Hulk after the fusion in the movie, and its strength has not shrunk much. However, compared with Hulk, it is difficult for Banner to be really angry, and it is not as easy to stimulate potential as pure Hulk, and become stronger and stronger through anger. It's not that it's completely impossible. For example, if he kills his beloved Betty, then the absolute anger value will soar and the potential will be fully stimulated. It's difficult at ordinary times. After discovering the appearance of the Hulk, those patrol robots surrounded him from the sky and the ground at the same time, and various energy weapons were shot at the Hulk mercilessly. The Hulk crossed his arms in front of his face to protect himself, relying on his body to resist the damage of energy weapons. At this time, a shield appeared from behind the Hulk in an arc, passing through the robots in front like a rotating blade, instantly cutting off their extended energy weapons. It was the shield attack thrown by Captain America. Wolverine, hiding behind the Hulk, was not idle either. He leaned over and rushed to the Hydra robot attacking from the ground at the fastest speed, waving his claws repeatedly, ruthlessly harvesting the robot's head. The piercing alarm sounded throughout the Triskelion building, and the rest of the Hydra soldiers quickly responded and gathered here, and began to defend with the Hydra robots, using energy weapons and various Hydra high-tech weapons to prevent the three from moving towards the building. It can't be just three, there must be someone else. In the director's office of the Triskelion building, Pierce looked at Captain America, the Hulk, and Wolverine on the surveillance, and his eyes narrowed involuntarily. After Sitwell and Crossbones lost contact, in order to ensure the normal progress of the plan, he transferred all the Hydra robots and asked Strat to borrow several superpowers. It is to prevent Coulson and others from counter-attacking with the people of the Superpower Academy. Now only 3 people from the Superpower Academy have come. The most powerful Professor X and Principal George have not appeared. Coulson, Black Widow, and Hawkeye, the remnants of S.H.I.E.L.D., have not appeared either. This is absolutely abnormal for him. He will not report any fluke at this time. Gordon, right? Just now you said that there are people with detection ability in your team. Then please ask him to help us find out if there are any of these people around. Pierce immediately put the photos of all the people in the Superpower Academy except the 3 people under surveillance and Coulson's dozen agents in the database on the big screen. After coming to him, these superpowers have reported their approximate abilities to facilitate his dispatch and cooperation. Collins. Gordon glanced at a young man behind him. The young man nodded, closed his eyes, and began to use his ability. The young man's superpower is to conduct a covering detection around himself. He can find people and things. He is an auxiliary member of the team. The others are not here, but these few people have been found, they are here. After a moment, the young man opened his eyes, pointed at Coulson and the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and reported their current location. Sure enough, there is a problem, but why didn't George come? Pierce was not surprised, but a puzzled look appeared on his face. He could understand that Professor X didn't come, because they all had psychic protection devices and were not afraid of psychic abilities, and it would be useless for Professor X to come. But George, who could release large-scale lightning, didn't come either, which made him puzzled. Could it be because he hasn't recovered from releasing that large-scale lightning? Mumbling a few words, he felt that this guess was more reliable, but he didn't take it lightly. He turned around and ordered Gordon and others. Go and capture these people, it's best to keep them all alive. Just in case, he could capture Coulson and others as hostages first, and even if George came, he could use the hostages to threaten him not to act so decisively. After catching Coulson and his people, let these superpowers help the robots deal with the 3 people who were attacking crazily. As long as the aerospace carrier takes off, there is no need to worry about anything. Give orders to turn on all the lightning protection devices near the building. After thinking about it, after Gordon and the others disappeared, he still asked his men to start the lightning protection devices to prevent George from suddenly appearing and giving them another thunderbolt. By the way, turn the lightning protection of the aerospace carrier to the maximum. Wait another 10 minutes, and all the preparations for the 3 aerospace carriers can be completed in 10 minutes. In order to shorten the time, he gave up some unnecessary things and wanted to send the aerospace carrier to the sky as quickly as possible. Coulson and the others have lost contact, and there is no sign of the robots and Hydra soldiers here being transferred away. It seems that Pierce has a trump card in his hand that we don't know about. 5 minutes later, Steve summoned his shield back to block an energy cannon attack, and said to Banner and Logan. Now we can only rely on ourselves, rush over with all our strength and find the 3 aerospace carriers. I'll take the lead. Banner picked up the barrel of the energy tank and swung the entire tank like a weapon, hitting all the robots and Hydra soldiers in front of him who were blocking the way. It was difficult to resist for a while. Steve and Logan took the opportunity to speed up and rushed towards the Trident building. However, at this moment, an eyeless man suddenly appeared behind Banner, and while he was not paying attention, he disappeared with teleportation. In front of Steve and Logan, there were also several young men and women who were not wearing Hydra uniforms. The girl standing in the front raised her hand and clapped, and a powerful shockwave erupted instantly. Even if Steve and Logan stopped in time to defend, they were still forcibly blown back. This is not good. Steve, who stood firm again, saw the strongest tank banner being taken away, the remaining robots and Hydra soldiers, and the few people who were obviously superpowers blocking the way, and knew that it would be difficult to complete the task. These superpowers only appeared now, which was obviously related to Coulson and others who had lost contact. In other words, Coulson's route was basically ruined, and now he and Logan were the only ones left. Are you still going? Logan tore off his clothes that had been beaten to rags and asked Steve. Steve nodded. Keep going, don't give up until the last moment. Chapter 242. Golden Legend Iron Armor. Hey, friends, your savior Iron Man is here. At this moment, a golden humanoid suit rushed from the air at a super fast speed close to Mach 5, and then landed in a chic heroic manner, standing in front of Steve and Logan. You are a show-off guy, but you came just in time. Although Logan and Steve were a little speechless about Tony's show-off appearance, they still smiled. Tony, we will attract firepower, you rush in and find a way to stop the aerospace carrier from taking off. Steve said. With Tony, there were only 3 of them, and there were more than 60 Hydra robots and hundreds of Hydra soldiers on the opposite side, as well as several superpowers with unknown abilities. Even if they won by chance in the end, the 3 aerospace carriers had already taken off. The most important thing for them now is to stop the aerospace carrier from taking off. There are only 2 of you left, what about the others? Tony nodded, and this time he did not refute Steve's plan. After the last battle in the God's domain, the relationship between the two has improved a lot, and he also recognizes Steve's character and ability to formulate battle plans. I guess they were all captured. Logan replied helplessly. George was also captured. Tony's face was full of expectations. Steve shook his head. George didn't come, he stayed in the school with Professor Charles. What a pity, I was thinking that if he was captured, I could save him and let him see my golden legendary battlesuit. The expectation on Tony's face instantly turned into regret. Every time he was saved by George, this time he finally used the technology of the God's domain to upgrade a new battlesuit. If he could save George once in return, it would be great. Here they come. Before Tony finished regretting, the Hydra robots rushed up in a rush. Let you taste this. Tony aimed the position of the arc reactor on his chest at the Hydra robots that rushed over, and golden energy circles appeared one after another, and then a golden energy cannon as thick as an arm was fired directly. The golden energy cannon was so powerful that it penetrated the bodies of the Hydra robots directly. But that was not all. As Tony's upper body moved, the golden energy cannon also moved with it. In a blink of an eye, more than 60 Hydra robots were destroyed. Only then did Tony put away the golden energy cannon. It consumes too much energy. This is all I can do for you. You can handle the rest by yourselves. I'll go shut down the takeoff system of the aerospace carrier. This golden energy cannon was very powerful, but it also consumed a lot of energy. Even his upgraded arc reactor consumed half of its energy just now. If he had this suit in Queens, those Hammer Industries robots would be nothing but chickens and dogs, vulnerable to a single blow, including the whip lock. The powerful golden energy cannon also scared the other side, and Tony took the opportunity to speed up and rush towards the building. Be careful of those superpowers. Steve and Logan reminded him and rushed to the remaining Hydra robots and soldiers to prevent them from blocking Tony. It's somewhat similar to my plasma electromagnetic cannon. At the same time, above the Triskelion building, the invisible George looked at Tony below, touched his chin and muttered. He came earlier than Tony, but he didn't take action because he saw that the aerospace aircraft carrier had not yet taken off and Steve and others were not in danger of life. Banner was accidentally teleported away, but his life would not be in danger. At most, he would not be able to get back for a while. For him, if he took action to solve the problem now, it would seem that the crisis was not that big, and it would not highlight the ability of the Superpower Academy. It's better to wait until the aerospace aircraft carrier takes off and the top leaders of various countries begin to get nervous. It won't be too late to take action then. Of course, if Steve and others can solve it themselves, he will just pretend that he has never been here. The chest cannon attack just now by Tony is somewhat similar to the attack mode of his plasma electromagnetic cannon. It's just that his plasma electromagnetic cannon is a combination of magic and superpowers, while Tony uses the technology of the God Realm to imitate the Rainbow Bridge to create a similar attack effect. In terms of power, the power of the chest cannon is much smaller than that of his plasma electromagnetic cannon. His plasma electromagnetic cannon can directly cut the hill in half. If it is used now, the entire Triskelion building can be cut into several pieces. In fact, it is normal. The Rainbow Bridge is not just a technological product, but a peak product of the combination of divine magic and technology. Maybe there is also divine power involved in it, which has such power and effect. Tony only uses the technology in it. He is already a genius to have such power now. It's that guy again. I didn't expect that the Inhumans in this world are mixed with Hydra. At this time, George was attracted by the situation on Tony's side. It turned out that after Tony passed through the remaining Hydra robots and soldiers, he was stopped by the Inhumans at the door of the building. George certainly knew the two iconic Inhumans, Gordon the eyeless teleporter and Daisy the shockwave girl. But he didn't imagine that the Inhumans in this world were Hydra's subordinates. When Tony was about to fly into the building, shockwave girl Daisy, wearing two Hydra special armors, raised her hands, aimed at Tony and began to release circles of shockwaves. Growing up in the afterlife since childhood, she learned a lot about superpowers. After successfully awakening her superpowers with crystals, she quickly mastered her abilities. In addition, Hydra made auxiliary armor based on her abilities, allowing her to better exert her abilities. The shockwaves she released now are not the shockwaves of the past, but waves that can cause the brain to be shocked through mechanical defenses. Although they are not fatal, they can cause headaches. Sure enough, Tony, who was hit by the shockwave, immediately stopped flying and fell down with his head covered. Jarvis, turn on the isolation device to shield the shockwaves. Tony, who was knocked down, immediately ordered Jarvis. Yes, sir. Jarvis intelligently turned on the shielding device of the battlesuit and isolated all the shockwaves outside the battlesuit. At this moment, Gordon, the eyeless man who had sent Banner away before, suddenly appeared behind him, wanting to copy the previous operation and send Tony away as well. The task given by Pierce was to delay time until the 3 space carriers took off, so as long as these people could be sent to the other side of the Earth far away from here, there was no need to worry that they could arrive in time. Just now, he sent the Hulk to the Great Wall. Later, Captain America and Wolverine became alert. He was hit several times before he could activate his ability and never succeeded. Now, while Iron Man was controlled by Shockwave, he was sent to accompany the Hulk. Even if Iron Man flew fast, he would definitely not have time to fly back from the Great Wall before the 3 space carriers took off. Chapter 243. However, just as Gordon's hand touched Tony, before he could activate his ability, Tony's Iron Man suit suddenly burst out with a strong electric current, which directly shocked Gordon to the point of Parkinson's disease, and then fainted. You may not know that my suit has an automatic defense system. Looking at Gordon, who was electrocuted, Tony said with some pride. This is the ability of his new suit. Even if he is in a coma, the suit can be controlled by Jarvis and counterattack after judging the danger. So even if he has not yet completely reacted to the shockwave, Gordon, who has bad intentions towards him, can be electrocuted. Gordon. Seeing Gordon being electrocuted, Daisy instantly turned on the shockwave to the maximum, and Tony was immediately rushed back to Steve and Logan. This shockwave girl is quite powerful. George looked at the shockwave girl below and played a key blocking role several times, and couldn't help but sigh. He remembered that the shockwave girl in the TV series didn't seem to be so powerful. But he seemed to have heard that in the comics, Shockwave Girl had defeated Magneto, but he didn't know if it was true. Hey, the army is here too, and they're led by someone familiar. At this time, George Fang found that a large number of soldiers, tanks, and various military weapons appeared not far away, led by General Ross, who had met him once before. Pierce, and all members of Hydra, give up resistance immediately, otherwise we will launch a full-scale attack. Ross controlled the loudspeaker in the command vehicle and warned the shield building loudly. These guys are really slow. Tony stood up. The attack just now didn't hurt him, but just pushed him back. Because Hydra's spies had been exerting their strength before, neither the World Security Council nor the US government was sure whether what Nick Fury said was true, so they didn't intervene in the game between the two. But this time it was obviously a big fuss. Nick Fury was dead, and Iron Man Tony also testified that he contacted the top government officials, so everyone realized the seriousness of the matter. The president urgently appointed General Ross to lead all the troops stationed near Washington to the Triskelion building to prevent Hydra's aerospace carrier from taking off. Seeing a large number of troops coming, the remaining Hydra robots and soldiers, as well as the aliens, all retreated to the door of the building and built the last defense. I advise you not to attack again. The dozen agents who just invaded here have all been captured by me. And there are still many captives who are loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D. and are held hostage by us in the building. If you launch an attack again, I will immediately execute them. Pierce threatened everyone outside through the loudspeaker. There was less than a minute left before the aerospace carrier took off. He didn't need the other side to be really threatened by him and dare not attack. He just needed to delay the last bit of time. Pierce, do you think I will be threatened by you? General Ross sneered in the command vehicle and ordered his men. Attack with all your strength, regardless of life or death, flatten the entire Triskelion building and completely destroy the 3 aerospace carriers. This was a death order given to him by the government leaders before he came. Stop the aerospace carrier from taking off at all costs. Not to mention the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, even the surrounding citizens can be sacrificed when they should. After General Ross issued the attack order, all the weapons of the army were aimed at the Triskelion building, including the gun muzzles of tanks on the ground, the rocket launchers carried by the soldiers, and the missiles carried by the armed helicopters in the air. If all of them were bombed down, it would not be a problem for the entire Triskelion building to be bombed into ruins. And all the Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. agents inside would naturally be buried. Daisy, stop them! Pierce, standing in front of the window of the director's office, was not surprised by General Ross's decision, but he was not worried because he had already had a strategy to deal with it. Daisy, who was standing in front of the building, heard the order, pressed her hands on the ground, and used her ability with all her strength. Her mother Jia Ying believed that her ability was the most powerful ability in the history of the Inhumans, and it was not just as simple as releasing shockwave attacks. What's going on? General Ross had just given the order when he found that something was wrong with the entire command vehicle. It turned out that under the influence of Daisy's ability, the ground where the army was located suddenly began to shake violently, and then cracks appeared one after another. The tanks and all the soldiers who were aiming fell into the cracks before they were fired. At this time, the large lake next to the Triskelion building suddenly cracked, and 3 huge aerospace carriers slowly rose from the bottom of the lake. Attack the aerospace carrier! Ross saw this and quickly ordered the unaffected armed helicopters to change their targets and lock the attack on the aerospace carriers. Unfortunately, before the missiles of the armed helicopters were aimed, the energy cannons on the 3 aerospace carriers had been activated, and dense energy cannons burst out from the 3 aerospace carriers. The armed helicopters in the sky were swept away in an instant, and the troops on the ground who had not yet recovered from the earthquake were also beaten to pieces, losing all their ability to fight back. Tony, take us up there. Steve, who had reacted, quickly said to Tony. From Pierce's threat of hostages to General Ross's ruthless refusal to prepare for the bombardment, and now the entire army was annihilated, it was only a minute. On the question of whether to stop General Ross from rescuing the hostages first, the 3 have not yet reached a conclusion. Captain America advocates rescuing the hostages first. Sacrificing a few people to save the majority is not his style, and his good brother Bucky is also among the hostages. Tony is very entangled. Intellectually, he thinks that General Ross's approach is correct, but emotionally, he cannot accept this approach. Logan's mind has not yet turned around. After all, things happened too quickly. Okay. Tony instantly understood what Steve meant. In this situation, there is no need to be entangled. He will lead 2 people to catch up with the 3 aerospace carriers, and then 1 person will enter the interior to see if the aerospace carrier can be lowered. At this time, a voice suddenly appeared and interrupted the 3. No need to go up, I will solve it. The 3 turned their heads and found that George had come behind them without knowing when. George, you are here, it's great. Seeing George appear, the eyes of the 3 suddenly lit up. I was worried that you guys couldn't handle it, so I came to take a look. I didn't expect things to develop to this point. George spread his wings and prepared to go up and shoot down the 3 aerospace carriers. At this time, the World Security Council should also understand the power of the aerospace carriers, and it would be best to come forward to solve the problem. However, at this moment, Tony's face suddenly changed. Rod said that a nuclear bomb is flying towards this side. The World Security Council believes that this place is out of control and decided to use nuclear bombs directly here. Chapter 244, Just a Nuclear Bomb. 10 minutes ago, the World Security Council projected meeting. Nick Fury is dead, and the situation is very unfavorable now. If Hydra's Insight plan is allowed to succeed, our country will be in danger, which may lead to World War III, or even worse. I have long said that Nick Fury will not lie to us, and we should support him to deal with Pierce as soon as possible. What's the use of talking about this now? It's not that Nick Fury has become more and more out of control in recent years and has done a lot of things behind our backs. I originally wanted to warn him, but I didn't expect that he was so useless and died in Pierce's hand. I've asked Ross to lead the army to solve it. Just relying on a few SHIELD agents and mutants won't be of much use. If necessary, you can directly level the entire area without any problems. It is said that there are many citizens living in that area. Isn't it a bad idea to do this? Humph, our country is not like you. We can sacrifice a few people for the safety of the entire world. We also hope that you can be as selfless as us in some decisions afterwards. Really, since I say that, I think it is better to prepare nuclear bombs in advance for the safety of the entire world. You need to know who that person is, Agent Coulson, right? What he said is true. Once the 3 aerospace aircraft carriers take off, the top leaders of our countries may be attacked immediately. And the energy weapons they made are simply not comparable to our current weapons. What did you say? Prepare nuclear bombs. You want to blow up our capital. I will never allow it. The president and many important officials are there, and their lives will be in danger if a nuclear bomb is dropped. For the safety of the entire world, it is worth sacrificing a few people to allow the majority to survive. You just said that now is the time for your country to sacrifice. No, I don't agree. I also think we can prepare nuclear bombs just in case. Don't get excited. Mr. President and those important officials in your country still have time, so they can evacuate first. At the worst, each of our countries can come up with some sincere compensation afterwards, which is related to the safety of the entire world. If Hydra's Insight plan is allowed to be completed, Washington will probably be the first to be attacked. Agree. Agree. Okay, but if we really want to launch a nuclear bomb, you must also understand that our sacrifice in Washington is for the entire world. We will have priority in many decisions afterwards. The Secretary of State thought for a while, finally nodded, and immediately turned around and asked his subordinates to notify all senior officials in the White House in Washington to evacuate. As long as the top brass is fine, the citizens of Washington will die if they die. On the contrary, after this incident, perhaps he who already had a large voice will have a greater voice on the World Security Council and gain far greater benefits than the destruction of a city. On the other side, the whole of Washington has been in a state of shock because of the fierce battle at SHIELD's Tri-Wing building. A large number of reporters tried their best to get close to this area, trying to get super big news that would make them among the first-class reporters. There were even reporters flying in civilian helicopters, broadcasting live. When the 3 aerospace shuttles took off, although those energy cannons destroyed all the armed helicopters, they did not damage these civilian helicopters. It's not that Pierce is so kind, but that Pierce wants to let everyone in the world witness Hydra's glorious moment through live broadcasts on these TV stations. From today on, Hydra will no longer hide in the darkness, and will officially appear in the world and rule the world. So the battle that is happening here in the Tri-Curve Wing building is basically being broadcast on most TVs across the country, and many people are watching it, and it is very popular. Can it not be hot? A large-scale armed conflict occurred in the capital, as well as the classic villain Hydra that only appears in comics and TV, and the first superhero Captain America who has been lost for decades. The story of Captain America and Hydra is almost known to everyone in this country and has been written into textbooks. There is even a dedicated Captain America memorial in Washington. Not only that, even the comic book character mutants that most people think of have also appeared, the classic character Wolverine. The most popular Iron Man recently is also here. Not to mention domestic, many foreign TV stations are broadcasting this report. In fact, the government does not want this kind of thing to become a big deal at all, and is trying its best to block it. However, the Hydra spies in the government also work hard for this glorious reappearance of Hydra. So in the end nothing was sealed, and everything that needed to be broadcast was broadcast. Nuclear bomb, are you kidding? Logan looked at Tony with a rare hint of fear in his eyes. He had personally experienced the explosion of a nuclear bomb, and most of the flesh and blood in his body was basically destroyed. He had gradually recovering pain, second only to the pain when he was poured into adamantium alloy, and it is still fresh in his memory. Are they crazy? Steve also had an angry look on his face when he heard this. Launching a nuclear bomb here will indeed destroy the aerospace carrier, but it will also kill most of the innocent citizens in this city. The nuclear bomb has been launched. It will reach here in 30 seconds at most. I will move it to another place. You stop the aerospace aircraft carrier. Tony counted the time, with a solemn look on his face. His current battle suit can reach Mach 5, which is completely capable of catching up with the supersonic nuclear bomb, and then take it to a different direction, and then send it to a place far away from the city to detonate. No, you all stay here, it's just a nuclear bomb, it's a piece of cake. George waved his hand and disappeared directly from the spot. Although he was surprised by the accident of the nuclear bomb attack, he could understand it. After all, when the Chitauri invaded the Earth, the World Security Council made the same decision, which was not a particularly unexpected thing. He didn't let Tony solve it because he was worried. Of course, it was the most reassuring for him to solve this kind of thing himself. If Tony made a mistake, the nuclear bomb could be remotely controlled and timed to explode. At such a close distance, he would be in danger. At the same time, it was also a way to show the strength to the senior officials of the Security Council and tell them that their most powerful weapon, the nuclear bomb, was just a toy for him. Here it comes. Soon, he spread his snow-white wings and floated in the air, and saw a nuclear bomb coming from a distance. Facing the most powerful and destructive weapon on Earth, George showed no fear at all. He raised his hand lightly, and the nuclear bomb was instantly fixed in the air. Then he waved his wand lightly. Flay dimension. The transfiguration spell was activated, and a blue light shot at the nuclear bomb, and the entire nuclear bomb immediately turned into a piece of wood of the same size. Chapter 245. Make Hydra despair. Taking out the box, George put the wood inside. The manufacture of nuclear bombs cannot be separated from metal, and as long as it is metal, it will naturally be controlled by his ability. You must know that in the first battle of the X-Men, Magneto relied on his own ability to instantly stop all attacking missiles. Therefore, as long as the nuclear bomb enters the coverage area of his superpower, it will basically be ineffective. The last use of the transformation spell to transform was to preserve the state when the nuclear bomb was launched. With the effect of his new wand, he could continue to preserve this state for a long time. According to the history of this world, the Earth's nuclear bomb is the ultimate weapon created by the Eternals, created by the group of gods who created the planet and life, in order to help mankind end the war. Even if it is placed in the universe, its power cannot be underestimated. The space battleship that defeated the Chitauri army with just one felt much more violent than the weapons of many advanced civilizations in the universe in Guardians of the Galaxy. Use the transformation spell to save it. If necessary in the future, he can release the transformation at any time and let the nuclear bomb return to its original shape and continue to attack and explode. This can be regarded as having another small trump card in his hand. After successfully disposing of the nuclear bomb, he turned around and faced the 3 aerospace aircraft carriers that had already taken off. Feel the despair, Hydra. Put your hands together and pull. Plasma railgun. A thick plasma electromagnetic gun ejected from George's hand, directly piercing an aerospace aircraft carrier. Then he moved his body to the right, split the space aircraft carrier in half from the middle, and continued to sweep towards the 2 ships on the right. After the remaining 2 aerospace carriers reacted, they quickly pointed the muzzles of their energy cannons at George. Boom! 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 Light magic 3 pillars. A golden magic circle rose from behind him, forming a light defensive magic circle that blocked all the energy cannons that were attacking. While blocking the attack, George did not give up maintaining the plasma electromagnetic gun, and continued to sweep across the 2 remaining aerospace aircraft carriers, cutting them in half and falling into the lake below. In less than 10 seconds, the 3 aerospace carriers carrying Hydra's hope of dominating the world were easily destroyed by George alone. For him, a large spacecraft without a defensive shield like an aerospace aircraft carrier is simply a living target. The key is that there is no defensive shield, and it is also very fragile. Not to mention him, the Avengers were almost blown down by Hawkeye's bomb. Oh, my god, who is he? He is the War Angel Michael. Oh my god, that's amazing. Is the last one a nuclear bomb? Who launched the nuclear bomb? Does the government want to destroy Washington? He stopped the bomb, he saved all of Washington. He saved our lives. At this time, the audience in front of the TV was stunned by the picture in the live broadcast. After all, this picture was too magical. Captain America, Wolverine, Iron Man, they all get it. Captain America was injected with super soldier serum, which is equivalent to a biological experiment. Wolverine is a mutant and a genetic mutation. Iron Man is even more understandable because of technological innovation. But George's was different. First it appeared instantly, then it spread its wings, then the hand-rubbed plasma cannon exploded, and the mysterious golden magic circle raised its defense. When combined together, it gave people only one feeling. That is God. Of course, everyone felt that most of them were relatively rational. After coming back to their senses, they were not only amazed but grateful to George, especially the local citizens of Washington. If George had not appeared to stop them, they would not know what threat the 3 Hydra aerospace carriers would pose, but they still knew the power of the nuclear bomb explosion. Also shocked were the members of the Security Council who had been paying attention here. Who is this guy? Is he also a mutant? Why hasn't Nick Fury mentioned him before? Nick Fury told them about the reconstruction of the Mutant Academy, but he only mentioned Wolverine and some mutant children, saying that everything was under control, but they didn't care. But he didn't expect that among these mutants, there would be such dangerous people. Just kidding, that is a nuclear bomb. It can stop and turn into wood by raising your hand. It can also be dropped within a few seconds. It can explode their most elite troops and threaten the 3 aerospace aircraft carriers of all countries in the world. Looking at it this way, this guy is much more dangerous than Hydra. Because if one day this guy wants to cause trouble for them, what can they do to stop him? I don't know how many things Nick Fury has hidden from us. It seems that I have to find a way to upgrade my golden legendary suit. Tony below looked up and watched George's plasma electromagnetic gun sweep across 3 aerospace aircraft carriers. Thinking about the chest cannon he had proudly shown off to Steve and Logan before, his old face suddenly turned red. Fortunately, George wasn't here just now. The principal is still the principal. No wonder Tian Tian is missing. It turns out he has developed new abilities. Logan couldn't help but sigh. In fact, he had seen too much and felt pretty good. George can develop some new abilities every once in a while, and he is used to it, but this time it is more powerful. Those superpowers have escaped, let's go in quickly and save Bucky and the others. Although Steve was equally shocked, he was still paying attention to his surroundings because he was worried about the safety of his good brother Bucky. Seeing the awakened eyeless man with several superpowers disappearing with teleportation, he raised his legs and rushed towards the Triskelion building. Tony and Logan followed him immediately after hearing this. Without the help of the Inhumans, the remaining Hydra robots and soldiers were no match for the 3 of them, and they soon broke through the defense and rushed into the building. How could this happen? How could this happen? How could he be so strong? In the director's office of the Triskelion building, Pierce looked at his years of hard work and ideals falling into the lake outside, and suddenly felt hopeless and even began to doubt his life. He really couldn't believe that a mutant could be so powerful. Could it be that the route he took was wrong, and Strat's superpower route was the right one? Kill them all, kill them all. At this point, he definitely couldn't stay here anymore, and he ordered his men to kill all the hostages. On the one hand, it was to vent his anger and revenge, and on the other hand, he wanted to attract the other party's attention and buy time for himself to escape. This matter was not over for him, he firmly believed that his ideal could be realized. However, after he finished speaking, he found that his men behind him did not respond. Quickly imprison. Soul capture and mind reading. Turning his head, a finger pressed on his forehead. Why are you here? God of strikes without shadows. After a moment, George retracted his finger, and Pierce's head and body separated instantly. Chapter 246. Welcome to the Superpower Academy. It turned out that George locked Pierce's position through telepathy, and directly operate over, and easily eliminated Pierce's men, and then read Pierce's memory with legilimency. As for why he wanted to kill Pierce instead of sending him to Cowlson for interrogation. First, he didn't want Cowlson and others to know the location of the cosmic cube through Pierce, and then find that the island had been destroyed long ago, and thus suspect that he took the cosmic cube. Although he would not hand over the cosmic cube even if the other party knew it, it would still be a bit troublesome. Second, he felt that if Pierce was not killed but imprisoned now, with the power of Hydra, he would be rescued sooner or later, so it would be better to kill him now and put an end to it. As for the intelligence of other Hydra, it was none of his business. Because most of the Hydra soldiers were sent to defend below, there were not many Hydra soldiers left in the building. He waved his hand to control the metal around to solve some of them, and then he met Steve and others who rescued the hostages. The next step was very simple. Senior SHIELD agents such as Cowlson and Black Widow took the rescued agents to carry out the follow-up work. George, Logan, Steve, and Tony were free. I think we should withdraw. At the entrance of the Triskelion building, Logan looked at the Washington reporters swarming here and suggested to George. Tony opened his helmet. I think you can be less anxious to leave. Sooner or later, the school will face the public. It's a good time to promote it. That makes sense. Now is indeed a good time. George, who was originally about to leave, thought about it after hearing Tony's words, and finally nodded. What Tony said made sense. Now that they have just saved Washington and even saved the world, it is indeed the best time to launch the Superpower Academy. Excuse me, are you really Captain America? Yes, I fell into the glacier and was frozen for 66 years. I was rescued by Dean George this year. Are you Wolverine in the comics? So mutants really exist. Mr. George, are you a mutant too? Why did Mr. Steve call you the principal? Which school are you the principal of? The reporters crowded in front of several people and asked questions at the same time, making Steve and Logan not know how to answer. Tony handled it well, but not many reporters asked him questions. Tony is usually the focus of the interview, but this time because everyone knows Tony too well, it is not new, at most they ask about Tony's new battle suit. So the focus should be on Captain America, Wolverine, and this Principal George who just seemed like an angel. Okay, let me tell you what's going on. Mutants, there are no mutants in this world anymore, we are just superpowers with various abilities. There are many people like us in this world, as long as they have a skill that surpasses ordinary people, they can be called superpowers. Tony is also a superpower in my opinion, because his genius brain has surpassed ordinary people. They call me the principal because I opened a superpower academy, which specializes in recruiting some superpower students to help them better develop their abilities. After graduation in the future, they can also make better contributions to the world. The faculty of our school, the lineup is strong, such as Captain America, Iron Man, Wolverine, etc. These are all teachers in our school. If you or your children have abilities beyond normal people, you can send them to our school for training. We can help you better control your abilities, and we can also help you better use your abilities and find the direction of future development. At this point, George paused. As for what happened this time? We received an invitation from Agent Cowlson of S.H.I.E.L.D. to come and help deal with Hydra's ambition to use aerospace aircraft carriers to rule the world. George also told everything about the Insight project. If you don't tell it, how can you let the public know that they not only stopped the nuclear bomb and saved Washington, but also saved the whole world? The government certainly doesn't want the public to know these things. The matter of launching a nuclear bomb at Washington was originally very troublesome to deal with in the follow-up. I don't know how much work needs to be done to appease the angry citizens of Washington and give an explanation to the citizens of the whole country. Now George has revealed the details of Hydra's Insight project, which will only make things more troublesome. But George didn't care about that. It was a headache for governments. The more headaches governments had, the less they would have to deal with the school. In short, people with special abilities from all over the world are welcome to join the Superpower Academy. The specific address of our school is New York. After reporting an address near the school, George winked at Tony and disappeared with Steve and Logan. He was not afraid to report the address. Anyway, the real location of the school could only be discovered by the people he told. Others could not see the school even if they were nearby. But as long as people were near the school, Professor X could sense it through telepathy, and then they could be admitted to the school after the admission interview. After this, the enrollment speed of the Superpower Academy will definitely increase greatly. Operating back to the invisible X-Fighter parked nearby, George cast a tracking spell and began to pick up Dr. Banner, who was sent to an unknown place by Gordon. In the evening, the X-Fighter returned to school. In the evening of the next day, George received a call from Black Widow. "George, does what you said before about letting me go to school to be a teacher still count?" It turned out that after this major incident, S.H.I.E.L.D. was completely abandoned by the Security Council and could only be retained as a local agency in the United States similar to the CIA, responsible for handling abnormal events. In other words, the original S.H.I.E.L.D. was a world organization that existed to protect world peace, and now it is a government agency that exists and serves to protect the United States. The new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. is Coulson, and the deputy director is Hill. Black Widow joined S.H.I.E.L.D. to atone for her sins. She felt that fighting for the peace of the whole world in S.H.I.E.L.D. could alleviate the mistakes she made in the Red Room before. After the Hydra incident, she had already thought about leaving S.H.I.E.L.D. Now that S.H.I.E.L.D. is fully serving the US government, she feels that there is really no need for her to stay in S.H.I.E.L.D., because that may not be atonement, but may increase her sins. Besides, she is not an American. Of course it counts. The school is short of teachers. Welcome to join the Superpower Academy. George did not refuse and smiled and accepted Black Widow's joining. Chapter 247. 3 Major Magical Forces. Academy City, Hound Force Headquarters. George, dressed in casual clothes, was walking towards the data room at the deepest part of the headquarters. All the nearby surveillance cameras failed under the influence of his electromagnetic force. Although the body in this world is a girl's body, due to poverty, the actual feeling is not much different from that of a boy's body, and there will be no troubles such as the chest being too heavy causing the body to lean forward. Normal bathing and the like can be easily done using magic without being too embarrassing. In terms of attire, he couldn't be like Misaka Mikoto and the Misaka sisters, who wandered around in a short skirt all day long. They all wore men's casual clothes and a hat by the way. It is not easy to tell the difference between men and women without looking carefully. Confuse the public. Casting a confusion spell on the hound guard guarding the data room, he walked in majestically and skillfully began to look through the information inside. With the efforts of the clones in the Harry Potter world, some relatively simple spells can be cast silently without a wand, but some advanced spells still need to be cast with gestures. However, if the clones in several worlds work hard, it won't be long before they can cast all the magic spells silently without a wand. Magic does indeed exist in this world. Looking at the introduction about magic in the information, George's eyes gradually lit up. Because they are worried about hackers and people with abilities like Misaka Mikoto who can use their abilities to invade computers, many important information and research results of organizations like the Hound Force will be kept in paper copies in the database. After he understood this, he would often sneak into the database to read some important sealed information. Today, he finally found clues about magic in the database. According to the information in his hand, there are many magical forces in this world, the largest of which are the 3 major forces of the Cross Church, the Roman Orthodox Church, the British Puritan Church, and the Russian Orthodox Church. What remains are many folk magical organizations and freelance magicians. However, this information does not introduce too much about these magic organizations, but simply mentions that they believe that magic also belongs to superpowers, and that magicians are actually a different kind of superpowers. An academy city doesn't seem to welcome magicians. Similarly, the magician forces are not so peaceful, and there is fierce internal fighting. Most magicians are in the church, so this will be easy to handle. After finding these clues, it is easy for George, because as long as he goes to the church to capture a high-level magician, and then read the other person's memory, he can know what the magicians in this world are like. Closing the files, George walked out of the data room. He had already read most of the research materials here, including a lot of research on superpowers, which was very helpful for him to improve his ability level. Number 9981, it's time to conduct experiments to improve capabilities. Not far after leaving the data room, he met Kiara Suda wearing a white coat. Kiara Suda looked at George with doubt on his face. George would use his abilities to block surveillance wherever he went, saying he didn't like being monitored, so he didn't know what George was doing every time he wandered around the base. But recently, every time he found George, it was always near the reference room. Although the guards in the reference room said they had never seen George, he always felt that something was wrong. No problem. George did not refuse, but followed Kiara Suda to the laboratory obediently. Kiara's many power-enhancing experiments can indeed speed up the improvement of his superpower level, but this guy is not only trying to improve his superpower level, but also wants to use his body for research to find out the reasons for his mutation. However, for him who can use legilimency and has psychic abilities, Kiara's small thoughts cannot be hidden from him. The soul is out of body. As soon as he arrived at the laboratory, George cast the Imperious Curse on Kiara's back, and then skillfully used electromagnetic force to shield the laboratory's monitoring. The Imperious Curse has a very good effect on ordinary people, and coupled with the blessing of psychic abilities, he can perfectly control Kiara Suda to serve him in every experiment. Go ahead, but don't draw my blood and change some data. Under George's order, Kiara Suda was very obedient and followed his request and began an experiment to improve his abilities. After the experiment, Kiara Suda looked at the report and reported. According to the experimental data, if you continue to develop for 2 months, you can break through to level 5. Very good, change the result of this experiment to 2 years. George stood up from the experimental machine, took out a small tube of blood and put it into the experimental machine. Changing the results of the experiment can make Aleister Crowley, the man behind Kiara Suda, less wary of him. And that small tube of blood was the blood he drew from his other Misaka sisters to replace his own blood in each ability improvement experiment. He would not let Academy City extract his blood for research. Naturally, he had secretly peeked at Kiara's memories, and based on Kiara's memories, he also gained a lot of new understanding of the entire Academy City. The most important one is the information about Aleister Crowley. At first, he thought that the top management of Academy City was the entire governing council, and it was these high-level officials who created Academy City and developed superpowers. But in fact, there is only one real high-level person in the entire Academy City, and there is only one real creator of the Academy City, that is Aleister Crowley, the president of the council. Kiara Suda and the Hounds are Aleister's direct troops. In Kiara Suda's memory, Aleister seemed to be omnipotent and had a perfect control over the entire Academy City, but he was always hanging upside down in the life support cabin in the 7th district. He had reason to suspect that the experiments of the Misaka sisters and the small robots that had been monitoring them later were actually from that Aleister. Aleister was definitely not simple to create such a large Academy City, develop so many superpowers, and had terrible power. His strength was even more unfathomable. So George did not act rashly, but began to keep a low profile and pass on false information about himself by controlling Kiara Suda. In normal actions, he would subconsciously use magnetism to prevent those small robots from approaching him, or directly use the illusion spell. Forget everything, fill in the memory. Using the forget spell to delete the previous memory, and then using the false memory spell to fill in the new memory, George finally lifted the Soul Reaper curse cast on Kiara Suda. After recovering, Kiara Suda did not find anything abnormal. After letting George leave, he took out the blood of George that he thought he had extracted from the machine and started a new round of testing. And George left the Hound Corps headquarters. Chapter 248. 100,000 3,000 Magic Books. Let's go eat something. Leaving the Hound Corps base, George walked on the streets of Academy City and randomly picked an underground food court and walked in. Although his current body has reached the point where he will not die if he does not eat, he will still feel uncomfortable if he does not eat for a long time. So if he is not too busy, he will still eat 3 meals a day normally. He randomly found a noodle shop and ordered a bowl of ramen. Just when he was halfway through eating, a crisp girl's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Hello everyone, I am the Discipline Committee member, and I am talking to you through telepathy. Don't panic. Now there are terrorists mixed in the underground street. The underground street is about to open the defensive wall blockade. Please leave as soon as possible. There are terrorists, everyone, hurry up. Hearing the notification in their minds, including the boss and diners, everyone quickly packed up and left the store. Seeing this, George had to put down his chopsticks and left the store with everyone. Situations like this occasionally happen in Academy City. This place is not as peaceful and beautiful as advertised. Sometimes, outside forces covet the science and technology and scientific research results of Academy City, sneak in and are discovered, thus causing conflicts. Sometimes, some arrogant and greedy superpowers do not have a clear understanding of their own strength, and thus embark on the road of crime, robbery, rape, and murder. Also, like the previous experiment of Misaka's sister, various research and experiments conducted by major research laboratories on superpowers are cruel, causing unexpected runaway of the experimental subjects. George has no interest in these. Now he mainly wants to stay in Academy City for another 2 months in peace, and when the superpower level reaches level 5, he will leave here and go to major churches to study and learn the magic of this world. Level 5 is the limit of Academy City and the limit of human superpowers. When it reaches level 6, it touches the realm of gods. He does not think Academy City can do it now. The discipline committee member who just performed telepathy on everyone is actually one of the 2 major institutions that maintain order in Academy City. There are no police in Academy City. The main people who maintain normal order and arrest criminal gangs are guards and discipline committee members. The guards are basically ordinary people, but they have the most advanced weapons and equipment in the world, including some rare exoskeleton armor. The discipline committee members are all superpowers, selected by the students of the school, and each school is a branch. Misaka Mikoto's slightly perverted roommate Shirai Kuriko, a level 4 superpower with the ability to move in space, is one of the discipline committee members. Hi, is this magic? However, just as he was evacuating with the crowd, he suddenly found an eye on the wall on the right. After scanning the crowd here, the eye quickly moved to other places, as if searching for something. Although it is magic from different worlds, there are still similarities in some features, so George judged that the eye is a kind of magic rather than the effect of superpowers. A magician actually entered the Academy City. George suddenly became interested, and he turned invisible directly with the illusion spell, chasing the eye, wanting to see what the purpose of the magician who sneaked into the Academy City was. As he chased, he found that the eye stopped in front of 3 students, 1 boy and 2 girls. Ha ha ha, finally found it. The eye suddenly burst into a somewhat crazy laugh after seeing the 3 students. From the laughter, it can be judged that the one who cast the magic should be a woman, but her voice is slightly neutral. The human virtual image created by mud forcibly replaced the stone giant guarding the temple with the guardian angel of Britain. The youngest girl, who was wearing a white nun's uniform, looked at the eyeball that suddenly appeared. Her eyes were dull for a moment, and she explained with a somewhat mechanical expression and voice. After the explanation, she returned to the look of a normal little girl. And the male student in the white shirt showed a surprised look on his face after hearing the little girl's explanation. Could it be that the terrorists the discipline committee members said are magicians? It seems that these people are not simple either. George became more and more interested. The little girl who looked like an elementary school student obviously knew a lot about magic and recognized the eye magic at a glance. And the boy also knew the existence of magicians. Okay, the party is about to begin. You guys should cry loudly in the rotten earth tomb covered with soil and stones. As the female magician's voice sounded again, the entire underground street shook instantly, and all the lights went out, falling into darkness. Then the big boy and the little girl started arguing. Index, you take the wind slash and hide first. Tuma, you should take the wind slash and hide. Since the enemy is a magician, I should deal with it. You are so thin, how can you fight, and you can't use magic actively? Let me do it, my right hand can eliminate all magic and superpowers. Tuma, you are an amateur in magic. Although I can't use magic actively, I have 130,000 magic books in my mind, and I know all the magic in the world. Using the knowledge of magic, you can also find a way to break the opponent's magic. Maybe this magician is coming for your magic book. Listening to the quarrel between the two, George was stunned. These 2 guys are not just not simple, they are simply too simple. One can eliminate all magic and superpowers with his right hand, and the other actually has all the magic books in the world in his head. Then what church is he going to find? If he can get all the magic books in the little girl's mind, he can learn all the magic in the world. This is simply a big treasure. If George's eyes can shine at this moment, it is estimated that the dark underground streets can be illuminated in an instant. Just as George was thinking about how to get 103,000 magic books from the little girl, hurried footsteps came from not far away. They are here too. There is a sound here, and some people have not evacuated. Shirai Kuriko and Misaka Mikato, wearing the armbands of the discipline committee, appeared in front of several people. When Misaka Mikato saw the boy, a look of surprise appeared on her face. So it's you. You and me, yes, me. When Kamijutuma saw Misaka Mikato, a look of doubt flashed across his face, but he quickly nodded as if he knew her. Some time ago, he lost part of his memory because he saved Index, so if he knew anyone during that period, he naturally wouldn't remember it. Since this girl who was with the discipline committee knew him, it was possible that they met at that time. Chapter 249, The Puritan Magician Attacks. They actually know each other. George was a little surprised to see that Misaka Mikato knew the boy, but judging from his expression, he didn't seem to be very familiar with her. What's going on now? Kamijutuma asked Shirai Kuriko, who wore the armband of the disciplinary committee. Seeing that Misaka Mikato knew Kamijutuma, Shirai Kuriko didn't hide anything. There are terrorists operating in the underground streets. The security guards have gone to stop them, but it is likely to trigger a large-scale battle, so I have to take the trapped people out of here first. After all, I have the ability to move in space. Then take them away first, and I'll go over and help the security guard. Kamijutuma pointed at the two girls behind him. Misaka Mikato nodded. You can only take two with you at a time. Send them out first, and then go find the other trapped people. Kamijutuma and I will go to support the security guards. She had fought against Kamijutuma and knew that although the opponent was a level 0 Esper, his right hand had a special effect that could nullify any superpower. No matter how powerful his opponent is, he can bring him down to the level of an ordinary person for physical combat. This is how she lost in single combat before. No. Just as Index was about to retort, Kuriko Shirai had already pulled the two of them and teleported away. When George saw this, he did not teleport there. Now that he knew Index's name, it would be too easy to find her in the future. Now he wants to see the level of the magicians who attacked Academy City, so as to determine the strength of magicians in this world. Stealth followed Kamijutuma and Misaka Mikato towards the place where the gunshots were heard, and soon they came to the battlefield where the security guards and magicians were fighting. But the battle here has ended, the guard fell to the ground, and the magician was not injured at all. The magician is a woman in her mid-20s, wearing a Gothic-style black dress, with fluffy and messy blonde hair like a lion's mane and chocolate-brown skin. Holding an oil crayon, standing in front of him was a nearly 5-meter-tall stone giant formed by magic. So it's Fantasy Killer. Isn't the key to the imaginary math area with you? The female magician saw Kamijutuma and smiled. But it doesn't matter, killing you will have the same effect. Who are you and why do you want to attack here? Misaka Mikato walked out from behind Kamijutuma, took out a coin and asked. Be honest, otherwise I won't let you escape easily this time. Trouble, you are a 5th level superpower again. I don't have time to waste time with you. It seems that it would be easier to kill the key to the imaginary math zone, or the index of forbidden books. After seeing Misaka Mikato, the female magician's face changed slightly and she drew a magic circle directly on the ground. My name is Shirley Cromwell, I come from the English Puritan Church, and I came here to cause a war. The magic circle on the ground emitted a dazzling light, and a deep hole was blasted directly into the subway passage 7 or 8 meters below. Since she escaped, it seems that she is not as strong as Misaka Mikato. George jumped into the hole in a flash, and then quickly caught up with the female magician named Shirley. As for Misaka Mikato and Kamijutuma, because the stone giant blocked their view, they could no longer see Shirley when they discovered it. Floating technique. After escaping in the subway corridor for a while, Shirley drew the same magic circle above, opening an opening to the street above, and then floated out of the passage with floating magic. You can't run away. He quickly drew magic circles nearby, and the eyeballs in the tunnel just appeared again, and then scattered. In less than a minute, she locked the target position and rushed in one direction. Does the magic in this world require a magic circle to be drawn in advance to be effective? Or is this her unique way of casting spells? George continued to chase him with doubts. 5 minutes later, on the side of a certain street, George followed Shirley and saw Index and another girl named Feng Zhan Binghua. The keys to the forbidden books and the imaginary math zone, one for magic and one for science, are just right to kill you. Shirley stood in front of Index and Feng Zhan Binghua, drawing a magic circle on the ground and chanting. The godlike person, the medicine of God, the power of God, the fire of God, represent the 4 heavenly symbols of the 4 realms, correctly deploy and guide the right power in the right direction. After reciting the spell, the 5-meter-tall stone giant appeared again. Come out, Alice, and kill them all. The stone giant raised his huge fist and smashed it towards Index and Feng Zhanbinghua. George, who was hiding aside, did not rush to save anyone, but was still observing. He felt that neither girl should be simple. One has all the magic books in the world in his head, and the other seems to him not to be human at all, but like some kind of aggregation of energy. Forced chanting twisting to the right. Seeing the stone giant's fist coming, Index immediately chanted a spell. As her spell took effect, the stone giant's fist suddenly deflected and hit the wall on the right. Shirley was not surprised when she saw this. As expected of a forbidden book, he actually saw through my spell instantly and interfered with my control of Alice. As an English Puritan, she was no stranger to the information about the forbidden number of indexes. She knew that indexes had 130,000 magic books in her head, including the Kabbalah technique that she was good at. Just now, Index used forced chanting to interfere with her control of the stone giant, which caused the stone giant to receive wrong instructions and make wrong attack actions. But as long as I don't control it, you can't interfere. The stone giants created by Kabbalah can be controlled by the magician to attack, or they can attack freely. They are not without a little wisdom. In this way, Index's forced chanting would have no effect. Sure enough, when the stone giant attacked again, Index's interference had no effect. At this moment, Feng Zhanbinghua rushed up and stood in front of Index. After receiving a blow from the stone giant in the front, Feng Zhanbinghua was not knocked out. Instead, half of his body was shattered like glass. There was no blood, only a faint light of energy inside. How so? Feng Zhanbinghua was also shocked by his physical condition, but Shirley over there was not surprised, but had a mocking look on her face. Have you forgotten that you are just a created monster, and do you really think you are a human being? I'm a monster. The memory in Feng Zhanhyoka's mind quickly recovered, and she remembered that she was actually one of the 2.3 million super students in Academy City. The AIM diffusion field aggregation naturally emitted, and she was not a real human being. Chapter 250. Magic and superpowers cannot coexist. Previously, Feng Zhanbinghua had been living in a virtual world, unable to touch or talk to humans. He was wandering around the Academy City like a ghost, feeling very scared and lonely. Until a few days ago, she accidentally touched Index, and then because of Index's power, she entered reality from illusion, and also experienced what it means to be a friend and what it means to be happy. Since I am a monster, let me, the monster, deal with you, the monster. Mobilizing the energy in his body, Feng Zhanbinghua's shattered body instantly returned to its original state, and then he used both arms to block another attack from the stone giant. But it only barely blocked one hand. Interesting, things are really getting interesting. Looking at the situation in front of him, George couldn't help but squint his eyes. Feng Zhanbinghua turned out to be a collection of AIM diffusion fields naturally emitted by 2.3 million super students. He felt that this was definitely not an accident, and it might be some kind of large-scale experiment in Academy City. It's over. The stone giant's left fist was blocked by Feng Zhanbinghua, and his right fist hit Index hard. At this time, George finally showed up and took action. Electromagnetic gun. He took out the coin and flicked it, and activated the electromagnetic gun, directly shattering the stone giant's right hand. Who is it? It's you again, don't think I'm really afraid of you. Shirley was suddenly startled, turned to look at George who suddenly appeared, and frowned again. Although she changed into men's clothes and wore a hat, she immediately recognized the other person as Misaka Mikoto, a level 5 superpower, and even the moves were the same. It can also be restored automatically. It doesn't seem to be a one-time product. George was a little surprised when he saw that the stone giant's broken right hand returned to normal within a few seconds. He thought that Shirley's stone giant was the same as the stone giant cast by Horvat in the Magician's Apprentice world. It would disappear as long as it was broken. But now it seems there are still some differences. But it also made him more interested. Even if such attacks come 100 or 1,000 times, they can't destroy my Alice. Shirley waved the oil crayon in her hand and released the amplifying magic circle. The stone giant rose from 5 meters to 8 meters and became stronger. Alice, kill them all! The stone giant roared angrily and threw his hands at George. George did not greet him, but held Feng Zhan Binghua in one hand and index in the other, and jumped back to avoid the attack. Since attacking some places won't work, let's just try smashing them all. Putting the two of them on the ground, he put his hands together and pulled them together, and the particle cannon took shape. Inject all the electricity from his body into the particle cannon and aim it at the stone giant running towards them. Plasma railgun. Thick plasma burst out and vaporized directly on the stone giant's chest. Then he shook his hand, and the plasma swept the stone giant from beginning to end, vaporizing it completely and disappearing into the air. But this time, the stone giant did not repair it. It seems that we have to smash them all at once to eliminate them. Is this the strength of a level 5 superpower? Shirley's heart trembled as she watched her stone giant completely vaporize. How can you be so strong? She knew that level 5 ability users were strong, but she didn't expect them to be so powerful that they could kill her Alice in one blow. It's not that easy. Let me see how many times you can launch such an attack. After reacting, she immediately drew a magic circle on the ground with a crayon, and in less than a second, the stone giant rose from the ground again. However, before she could raise her head to order the stone giant to attack, her pupils shrank instantly. Because she heard George's voice, and the voice was actually in her ears. It seems that the focus is still on you. Only by defeating you can we prevent the stone giant from regenerating. She stood up and gave a backhand elbow, but it missed her. Before she could continue the attack, she felt confused and fainted on the ground. It turned out that when George saw Shirley summoning another stone giant, he directly stimulated his physical body with electricity. He quickly came behind Shirley, avoided Shirley's elbow, slapped her on the head and knocked her down. It seems that the magicians in this world are not good at physical body. I don't know if they are special cases. In fact, the magic of this female magician is not weak. The stone giant she summons is powerful and has high defense. It can also heal itself. Even if it is destroyed at once, it can continue to be summoned again. It's really difficult to deal with ordinary superpowers. Even Misaka Mikoto would be troublesome without the thunder giant. But the premise is that the female magician must hide in the dark and control it. Otherwise, standing in front of people like this, and her melee ability is not strong, she will be easily knocked down. Let me see your memory. This female magician is not weak, she should have some status in the magic world, and she is expected to be able to get a lot of useful information. Legilimency. Using the legilimency spell and telepathy, George put his hand on Shirley's eyebrows and began to read her memory. How many memories does a person have over 20 years? There must be a lot of them. Even if you remove some unimportant ones and only look at the important memories, and replace them with videos normally, you won't be able to watch them all within a few months. But this is only under normal circumstances. In the human brain, thinking runs at a high speed, the mind browses quickly, and the memory reading speed is actually many times faster than reality. It was like a dream. It felt like a long time had passed in the dream, but when I woke up, I realized that I had only slept for a short while. Especially when I was lying on the table for a lunch break. So in less than a minute, George released his hand on Shirley's forehead, but his expression was quite wonderful. I didn't expect it to be like this. The gains from reading Shirley's memory far exceeded his imagination, and he finally understood this world. Let's talk about Shirley's experience first. Shirley Cromwell, a magician belonging to the British Puritan Special Force Necessary Evil Church. His field of expertise is earth-attributed magic represented by the manipulation of golems. At the same time, he is also a code interpretation specialist of the British Puritan Church. He is an expert in interpreting, constructing, and preserving codes hidden in paintings such as allegorical paintings and coats of arms. 20 years ago, some magicians of the British Puritan Church and some scientists in the Academy City had a common idea. They wanted to try to make magic and science work together. They wanted to concentrate each other's technology and knowledge in the same facility, try to combine superpowers with magic, and create a brand new magician. The magician can use both superpowers and magic, and he will become the strongest being. The result is obvious: failure. In this world, magic and superpowers cannot be combined, otherwise the 7 orifices will bleed and be seriously injured, or the body will collapse and die.